What's your total? Your squat, bench press, and deadlift. This plain figure gives us one objective standard that we can use to compare yourself to tens of thousands of lifters. Leave a comment below saying your number and nothing else. You didn't comment yet. I'm not moving on until you do. If this video gets 20,000 views, I average 1.6 views per viewer, which means I should see 12,500 comments with one number per user. Do it. Thank you. Now I'll enter narration mode again. Most people start off with a goal of 1,000 pounds. My primary goal when I started in powerlifting was 1,500.
I'm destined for greatness.
The amount of lifters who've ever hit a 2,000 pound total is 0.1%. Move that threshold up to 2,485 pounds, and it's 1. 1 in powerlifting history. Dan Bell has never been featured on a channel with 100,000 subscribers. He doesn't get the same level of attention that Thor gets. He doesn't have the same level of clout that Larry Wheels has. And he doesn't even get the same level of shares that Ray Williams does. And keep in mind, Dan had the all-time world record in reps and also without reps at the same time. He squats 1,000 pounds, deadlifts over 900 pounds, and benches around 600 pounds. He has no major weakness. In this video, we talk about everything too. How strong he'd be if he never used steroids, what his goals are 10 years from now, and simply, how does he train? So without further ado, I give to you the strongest powerlifter of all time, Dan Bell. What's up, guys? It's Johnny Candido of Candido Training HQ. Today's video, we have a special guest, the strongest powerlifter in history, the biggest total in both without reps and with reps, Dan Bell. So you've totaled basically 2,500 pounds in both, very, very close to doing so in sleeves. And you have done so, in sleeves, and you have done so in reps. First question that I have for you is, how does it feel to kind of be in the shadows somewhat, as far as you're probably the least attention seeking out of all of the just flat out all-time world record holders? Do you feel criminally underrated, or do you kind of like that?
No, yeah, I do not mind one bit. And I really don't think, Andre, he never really, spoke about his publicity. He was just that good for that long. So, like, if you don't know who Andre is, you don't know powerlifting.
Yeah. See, that's the thing that's interesting is even someone like Andre has still made a video with Omar Isuf, a friend of mine. Right. And it's interesting that you truly are the one person who I don't think, prior to this, I don't think you've been on any YouTube channel with 100,000 or more subscribers, right?
Oh, no.
Of anyone? Yeah, so that's right. Partially why we want to break here. We want to break through it. And to me, that's really exciting that so many people who are watching my channel are unaware of who you are, of the fact that you quite literally have done the goal of our sport better than anyone, flat out. But I will also say that someone did mention you in the comments right away in my last interview. So you definitely have some diehards out here really ready for it. Yeah. So the first question is just, how's your training going during the pandemic?
Oh, well, I got super lucky with the gym that I have here in Daytona Beach, Florida. They kind of kept the doors open, but they weren't over the top about telling people about it, and it was really the only dedicated one, really. And of course, I mean, the owners, the competitive powerlifters too. So we got the gym, might as well use it. And the people that want to keep going, come on in. The people that want to stay home, stay home. And it was awesome. There was a couple of days where the hours were shut down, and extra cleaning and whatnot and stuff like that. So it was cool, and it was also pretty cool to see most of the people from the gym, like whether they were going or not, they were still supporting it because they loved the place so much. That was really cool to see too.
And so for you personally, did you have to limit the amount of time you spent in your sessions? Because I'd imagine for you, it's got to take a while just to warm up, right?
Yeah, usually the Sundays usually when we heavy pull or heavy squat, and it was a crunch, because they were only open like noon to 4 or something like that. And there's a lot of times that I'm always last one out. Never the first one there, but always the last one out.
So you were able to train as far as volume and everything exactly the same? Just had to fit it in harder? Or?
Yeah. We'll see, like when it all really started was when I first bought, or first got my pair of briefs, because I was like,
Oh,
I didn't know what was going to go on. I knew I couldn't plan because the Kern just got canceled because of it. And I was like, all right, well, I shot that out of the window, because right at the beginning I was 5 weeks out, 6 weeks out from the Kern, so I was starting to ramp things up, and like, if that's usually when you got to turn things on and make sure everything's getting precise, for me anyways. And so I was hitting big numbers, and I was like, man, I don't want to waste this. So I grabbed those briefs, grabbed a single ply shirt, and just started messing around with that, just trying to like sharpen my edge and find out the other side of it. I've talked plenty about gear and whatnot, and getting into it was a different. It was crazy. It was pretty crazy.
And so is that as far as we will get into your goals a little bit later, but are you trying to go for the trifecta here? Is that what you're trying to do, as far as without or just with sleeves? You already have the all-time world record total. With wraps, you have the all-time world record total. Are you trying to do that in multiply and have all three at once?
It'd be nice, but I just think the time that it would take to do that for me and be up there, or take David's Hoff's record, the time that it would take is just not what I want to do. So no, that's I'll probably play around in it in the near future, but not really going at it competitively. That's why I got plans this year for taking the sleeve total and the wrap total up some more, and then hopefully chilling out.
So which one of those two matters more to you? If you really had to focus on one, which one, especially let's say in the next 5 years? Because right now, let's say you can play around with both, but let's say it gets a little bit more and more competitive to where now you clearly have to pick one and other people are really close. Which one would you pick?
Oh, definitely wraps.
With wraps. Okay.
Yeah,
That's very interesting.
It just something. I've only done 4 sleeve meets, so.
Really?
Yeah.
And you squat, to be very clear to people, I probably already mentioned this in the intro, you've squatted 1,000 pounds with sleeves, right? 1,003?
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And that's just on the side. But why is that? First of all, is that because of the money meets, or because of people are mostly in it, or because you enjoy squatting with wraps more? Which one of those three?
It was just something. That's like how I fell in love with powerlifting. It was like, the goal is the most weight on the bar, and if I can use these wraps and it's legal or whatever, and the feds let me do it, then I'm gonna get as many pounds out of the bar as I can.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Cool.
Yeah, and speaking of which, okay, I'm gonna start into something that we've made clear off camera, just so people know that this is a cool topic to talk about. I'm not coming at you, but here's the first juicy question: is how strong were you when you were natural? What was the strongest level you were at?
Okay, yeah, 2014. I was literally on, I guess you could say, for 4 weeks prior to my first meet, and I mean 749 total, or 749 squat, 440 bench, and a 716 deadlift is what I ended up with that day. Of course, I didn't really test it out too much. The December before was really the first time I did any kind of competition, and I just pulled 715 and I benched 425. So how to gauge what I got out of it. It's so tough. And so that was, of course, 6 years ago now, and it's just, of course, been on ever since. But I don't. I think once you go, you don't come. You can't. There's no coming back. So
and that's what I really liked about your interview. For those who haven't seen it, you did an interview with Pete Rubish, where you were very explicit about everything that you kind of went through, as far as risks you could take, and then risks that just aren't worth it. And yeah, first of all, I commend you for being very clear on that, because that's actually something that's very important to my channel, just being clear on everything. And I'm a curious guy, so to me it would be hard to ever do an interview if I'm like not allowed to ask certain things or dancing around certain things. So I really appreciate that. And something that I want to ask you, so now let's go to the real start of everything, is first of all, how long did it take you to squat 500 pounds? Just flat out.
Well, the first competition, but the first squat, that I remember doing was high school, and I was already at 550 was my best then.
That's the first you remember?
Yeah.
You remember before 550? That's amazing.
I did a meet that I bombed. I never deadlifted prior to a meet that I did when I was 18 years old, so I bombed out. And that was like my first and only taste with really powerlifting. And then I quit for 10 years almost. I didn't get back to the platform for another 10 years. Like in high school, we did a lot of leg press, and it wasn't much like squatting. The high school gym that I went to wasn't the best. And back in 2005, when I was a senior, like still didn't have the greatest programs. Football team was never good. Track team was never good. Just small town in middle Illinois.
Yeah. So speaking of which, what specifically got you started in lifting? Which sport was it? Was it football or track? Personally, I'm actually a huge track fan myself. And so did you throw shot put? Because that's actually would be an interesting theme if like every super heavy is throwing shot put.
No, actually freshman and sophomore year I did, but I didn't really pursue it much after that. And I really wasn't the greatest academically. You could say through high school, but yeah, it just didn't really tickle my fancy. I just focused on football, and I did start lifting quite a bit more sophomore year. I had one specific coach that was like dedicated to me more or less. He was also the driver's ed teacher and the PE teacher. Those are only two classes that I passed my sophomore year.
So how long did you play football for?
All 4 years.
Okay,
all 4 years of high school. Then of course the prior junior high, we played tackle football since 6th grade. But after high school, I did play a lot of rugby. I played competitive ice hockey since I was 11. That was a fun. I love that because I got to play with my dad, so it was just a little bit more bonding time there. And then snowboarding. I never competitively snowboard, but recreation. I did a lot of that. That's real fun. I did that all through my 20s, but really after high school, I was kind of done with organized sports.
When you were done, was there any point where you considered? Because personally, I went to a D3 school, so I know the struggle some people have where it's like, okay, still do sports, and then you just kind of are like, okay, where is this actually going? For you, was it clear cut that you were never going to play football in college, or you didn't want to? Because I mean, I'm sure if you really wanted to, you could find whatever type of setup.
Yeah, there's a few colleges that were pretty hot and heavy out of me, like junior colleges, stuff like that, with nothing D3. But yeah, there was a couple of them that were pretty hot and heavy about me, and I just knew. I feel like, nah, it really wasn't for me. I loved football; it was fun, but it wasn't something I wanted to do.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, do you think having that diverse background helped with powerlifting, or do you think if you would have been better off if you were 13 years old in a, let's say, Texas high school single ply powerlifting club, since they're really the only ones that really have high school powerlifting as an option? Which version of Dan Bell would have developed into a higher total? The version you have, or the more specific route?
I think I would have done a little earlier, the higher total. I think you kind of would have. I probably would have peaked a little bit more naturally. You could say, because I was 27 really when I started like competitively getting into it. So didn't really come around for me until later in life. But I don't think I'm going to be. I don't think I was. I know I wasn't stronger before, and I'll be a little bit stronger, hopefully, than I am now, but not much. It's up there, man.
It's interesting because I think, as you mentioned, Andre, his peak was. I mean, you're 33, right?
Yeah.
And his peak was what, 39, right? 40, maybe, like somewhere around there, right?
I was 36.
Was it 36? Okay.
Yeah. 37.
And so that actually, it's an interesting point. Is that it's like where is the ideal peak? I know there's at least one study that I remember suggested 37, and then for the bench it's a little bit later. For the deadlift it's a little bit sooner. As far as how about as far as body weight goes though? Like, doesn't that kind of artificially dictate where the peak will be? Because that's the thing that I would think, especially on the untested side, is like if Andre wanted to continue to get bigger, he could still set PRs till he's 41, probably, right?
Yeah, and I remember him actually going up in body weight. I followed him pretty intensely. He had his best performances about 340, 355 range, but then when he did go up, his leverages changed so much. I do remember seeing that or noting about that too. And I really think this, like, I'm 390 right now, and I really think this is where I compete pretty solid at. But I don't want to get much bigger. When I did hit that 2518, I was 402 the day before, so. Gosh knows what I was that day. But, Yeah, Donnie Thompson actually he totaled 3,000 the first time when he was 46 years old too. So I mean, I'm sure the age it plays a factor, but it's not determination could beat that and drugs.
Yeah, so let's go as far as programming goes. What is there any public program that you're on? Is there any known program? Like, did you ever run? Did you run Starting Strength? Did you just something where you're just like, boom? There's actually a 600 plus pound bencher who said he ran my 6-week program, and I'm like, what, really? It's like you never know. Yeah, you never know where this stuff goes. So, is there ever a point where you were just on T Nation, and you just pull a program and you just ran it that other people would know of, maybe?
No, not at all. There's like I remember when I first just started training to lose weight, I would just really it was like a 5-3-1, but it was more of a pyramided 5-3-1 where it condensed down a little bit. And I think I got that off bodybuilding.com, but I don't know if it was like recognized. But yeah, and then after when I started powerlifting, I was maxing out every day. I didn't
Really?
I didn't have any idea. Like there was a couple of guys had to tell me, they're like, hey, you don't train this week. It was before, like, I had no idea about a deload, like, whatsoever. And they're like, what? Like, yeah, they're like, yeah. Don't.
So how actually was it? So you say you max out every day on squat and bench, and then
like one day go in squat, one day go in bench, one day go in deadlift, and then we of course we had the shoulders and the bicep day too. So it was ridiculous. The way.
So how long did that work? Because I'm curious. Because a lot of times, I mean, you and Ray Williams basically are very similar in that aspect. Or both of you guys did a program where you just boom, go heavy super often, and then obviously at some point that's not gonna work. but it's how long did that work? Like what period did you start strength wise and then end, and then you kind of cleared it up?
Yeah, it had to have been at least 2 years. I know.
Really?
Yeah, at least.
And like, what your squat? Let's say, what your squat start and then end with that approach of just going super hard, and just maxing?
I can remember like the week before my first competition, I hit like 660 for 6, and like I remember failing 500 like a couple times prior to that, just for singles, like year before. So it was always like squat was hit or miss, and who was there? Yeah, it was just like who did I got to.
So did you say that was probably then like 500 to 720 ish as far as for one rep?
Yeah, 749.
749. Yeah, so from there to
that was my first squat in competition.
Yeah. So do you think as far as going from natural to unnatural affects that part in particular? Because I would imagine once you make that switch, now you're going to snap up if you did that. Whereas maybe as a natural, it's like a little, I think you can see people kind of get away with overtraining a little bit more. Is that your experience?
Definitely. 100%. Recovery time's cut in half and your strength just goes to the roof. It's more of a, how much can you bite off? Then at that time, it's like, can you wrap your head around this number that 3 weeks ago it wasn't even in your mind?
That's actually really interesting. Actually speaking on this is what was your worst injury that you've just ever had flat out in powerlifting?
I teared my IT band. That was
really? When was that?
That was 2016. The end of 2015. Yeah.
So how long did that take to recover?
It was a full 4 months before I squatted 135, and then I got monotonous right after that. Like I had to squat at least one plate every week after that, and I just kept going until it was probably not the smartest thing. Well, it was something to learn from, that's for sure.
Yeah. So before we wrap up the kind of come up period, is what really made you make the switch to untested? Because you mentioned that it was your first meet, and I did look that up, and I thought you have a very interesting history where both you started untested and you've done an incredible amount of meets, which is both of those things are basically, you never see anybody with that combination. Because actually, to your point about I think you alluded to like how some other people wait for it a little bit later. Because I actually know a lot of people don't realize that Joe Sullivan, even to my knowledge, even Dane Green did a USAPL meet. I remember seeing something that it was behind a paywall, I think, but the results from him on USAPL. Ernie Lillibridge got busted in the USAPL. A lot of people don't know about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Malik Durstein, who had the 181 record at one point, he was an IPF lifter. He was like third equipped, and it was very interesting because he was very high up there, but he was third at Worlds, which is very, very good. But then he went to the best ever for a certain period of time. He's the best 181 in history.
Yeah.
And then let alone, John Hack, Ben Pollock actually did run nationals. So what was the reason why you just straight up started in this? Aside, was it people you just knew in your local gym? And then also, what was the reason you did so many meets?
I think that was like that was just with the age. I was kind of older to where if I would have known about and been in more competitive powerlifting, like probably in my early 20s or teenage years, I probably would have thought about that a little bit more. But I'm like, hey, I'm 27. I'm already this far down the road. Might as well just go go full bore for it. Why not? And I did. Like I said it my first meet. I want to squat $1,000, and then I said that for the first 3 years of powerlifting. I was like, I just want to squat 1,000 pounds. I don't really care about much more than that. And then I did. Kept going from there. I was like next kilo and whatnot. But yeah, so many meets that was silly. That was poor decision making. I just loved it. That platform adrenaline really hooked me. And then just having a goal. There were some pretty rough times personal wise during that time. And this was my outlet. It still is, but it just my life wasn't prime in a good spot. But and then again, there's also a give and take on that situation too, because I put powerlifting in front of a lot of things that I now don't, and it makes powerlifting and life flourish. It's kind of nice when you get all aspects of life to go.
That's really interesting. That's very similar to what Ray has alluded to. It's very similar to in my personal life, is that it seems like there's this point where I don't even know if you need actual different people sometimes, where it's like it just actually doesn't work with the lifestyle. And but then the worst thing you can do is just accept pushing everybody away to train. And then ironically, that typically makes the training itself worse.
Yeah.
Because if you have a bad day in the gym, it's like you have a bad life for that whole day.
Exactly. Might as well go to sleep or get drunk.
So what was the inspiration to do powerlifting at all? Was it Westside Barbell? That's kind of the vibe I get. No, it wasn't.
Not whatsoever. I didn't even know about Westside, honestly.
Really?
Started. Yeah, it was 2015 was the first time I went out to Ohio and did a meet, and I had to weigh in at Westside, and I was like, place seems pretty cool. They're like, you don't know what this place is? I'm like, I've heard of it. And then like, of course, I'd heard of Louis before, but like I knew he ran a gym, but I didn't know that it was Westside Barbell. Like it didn't have the name, I guess you could say. And social media wasn't as huge as it is back then either, which was kind of nice in a certain standpoint, but it was different.
So how did you find the sport then? Like, because with me, it was like actually through Google, where I was just like, I remember searching powerlifting, and USA Powerlifting was the first result. And then actually, I won't talk too much about myself, but it was funny that I mistakenly assumed the single ply numbers were what it took to qualify for nationals, which actually motivated me. And it was actually still extremely lowballed. And I qualified, but then it was just close enough to where it mattered to me. If I knew there was no qualifying total, I probably would not have done it, to be honest, because I was still like a long jumper. I was still just doing other stuff. So for you, what like literally, if you could reenact it, what was the actual moment where you found out like there's this meet in Ohio? Like, how do you actually even get to that point, especially without social media?
No, well, there was it was a charity event. And there was just a push pull, and like my buddies were at the gym, like, "Hey man, let's go do this push pull and raise money for this town that got hit horribly by this tornado." And I don't know if you know much about Central Illinois, but there's quite a few tornadoes that run through there. And I was like, "All right, man, that's cool." We were all just training together at the time and doing the same, maxing out every single day, and like, let's see what we could do. I benched 440 and I pulled 715, and I'm just like, this is something I could get used to doing. This is really, really fun. And there were a bunch of guys there from Jack Hardcore Gym out of Montgomery, Illinois. And they were like, hey, man, if you had any idea what you were doing, you'd be great at this. And the one guy got a hold of me on Instagram, and he's like, will you please just sign up for this meet? I'll help you out, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I got in and did the meet. And I was still, at that time, really wasn't too interested in, doing the whole thing. But I was watching a bunch of Pete Rubish videos, Eric Gillibridge, all these guys. And I'm like, wow, this is really awesome. This is pretty cool. After that meet, I told 1906, 12th in the country, took second to Ernie Sr. And I was like, all these guys are so nice and helping. And like, I feel like I could be part of this. I feel like I could make an impact and do really good at doing this. And it was just that. It was like after that first meet, I knew. I was like, this is something I want to be part of. This is something I want to do. And I feel like I could be really good at it. And
yeah, that's awesome.
Here I am.
And so when you started out, were you as well-rounded as you are now?
Oh, no, not at all.
What lift lagged the most?
My bench. Yeah, it took me, I had to go super heavyweight. I never hit a 500-pound bench when I was 308.
Really?
Yeah.
So did you start any lift notably later than the rest? Like, did you start squatting, benching, deadlifting all around the same time? Or is there significant gaps between those that may have affected things until recently?
Yeah, well, like my squat had always been increasing slowly or progressively pretty well, but my bench just really stuck around 495.
Yeah. Like let's say literal just age. Like what age did you start squatting versus start benching?
Oh,
did you start at any different time, or was it just all together?
All together, yeah.
All together, and it was all pretty young.
Yeah, exactly. But say like my leg development and the way that like I've always had huge legs, but that was because ice hockey and snowboarding and football on top of that too. But then again, like you figure that football being a lineman, that would help with your upper body too. That just wasn't the story for me for bench. But I always trained them all. Like I fell in love with squatting, and I was like, this is awesome. And who doesn't love bench? I mean, deadlift, it took a while to get to like.
So deadlift the entire time. So that's one that all three you started around the same time. So you said something like you started playing sports at 11, right? You said something like that with the hockey.
Yeah.
And then so you started lifting at around, what was it, at 11 to 14, or what age specifically?
Like lifting to train for sports, it wasn't until sophomore year, so probably 16, 17 years old. Yeah.
So at that point, that was, I mean, you squatted 550 around that same time.
Yeah.
So you started benching at around 16, right, and everything. That's pretty interesting. Because I do know of some people, like I personally, I've started benching when I was like literally like 12. That edge didn't hold. Yeah. So let's go to now. So first of all, what are your main goals now as far as numbers? Let's not even talk anything other than just hard numbers here.
So I'm gonna squat in sleeves in 2 weeks at the showdown meet. I'm gonna squat 1014. And then in November, I'm going to squat 1,100 in reps.
That'd be 500 kilos, right?
Yeah.
500, right? Or what would that be in kilos exactly?
The 500 is 1102.
Okay. So it's like right. It's exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the best squat I got in Multi-ply too. And then I just want to bench 600. I don't know if it's going to happen at the showdown. I don't know if it's going to happen in November, but that's been a big goal. 602. So like 380 or 285, somewhere around there. And then I'll pull 900. If I have to, I'll try to pull 925, but I know 900's there consistent, 903, 410. I know it's consistent and calculated numbers. That's what I need for the totals that I'm aiming for. I'm going to go 1140 at 2513, the showdown. And then I think it's 1155 or 1162.5 is what I want to go. 2607 is what I want to go in November. And
okay, so 2600 with wraps and breaking 2500 with sleeves.
Yes, sir.
Now long term, really, what are your goals where you're like, this is what you're set on? Like you're dead. Are you a number driven person or are you a ranking driven person? Actually, let's ask that.
It's a number driven, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And as far as looking ahead, these are kind of the numbers that I plan on. These are the numbers that I'm going to stick to. You know, we all know that it could or could not happen very easily. And that might drive me a little bit past, but I know after November, I kind of want to take a good break. I just got married in February this year, and I kind of got some plans with trying to make a family and whatnot, and then that's gonna be my next goal, inevitably. After this, it's my next goal, and who knows what's gonna happen in powerlifting? You know, the rest of this year, even in 2021, it's kind of a toss up with this whole COVID nonsense we got going on, but I really feel like those might be untouchable for a couple minutes. So
that'd be so. If you so you hit let's say you hit the 25 and then 2600 now. Yeah, that's interesting. So do you, as far as sleeves go, would you say, do you think it's more or less a 50% chance that you end with a 2600 plus total before it's all said and done, before you get married, ride off in the sunset, relax?
I feel more comfortable with the 26 than I do with the 25 in sleeves.
Or I mean 26 in sleeves. Let's say I'm pushing it big time. Yeah, I'm saying straight up the next 5 years, like whatever decisions you make. Because I mean, because to me personally, you know, I would say the sleeves record is definitely, at least I would say what probably resonates with the most of the general population. And it is interesting that it's like right now you dictate really what people see human potential as. Like, it's just what is the biggest total? Like, everyone knows their total. I remember when I totaled 1500, I thought like, okay, it's getting serious now. It's like, you're the guy who makes it for. It's like, okay, it's possible for some human out there to total 1,000 pounds more than that. And it's interesting that, I mean, really you get to decide where that line is. And it's kind of cool that you get to decide it based on your own, you know, kind of free will, as opposed to just being forced out through a bunch of injuries and pushing it too hard to the edge. Yeah. So let's imagine what if you did hit that sleeve total of 20, low 25s, but breaking the 25 barrier, but let's say you hit it very well. At that point, do you feel like an obligation to humanity? Just kind of like, look, I just gotta hit 2,600 and then just bounce. Because you never know. It might be another 10 plus years before anyone even breaks that. Maybe longer, maybe 20 plus.
Yeah, bringing it up like that, it's funny because last November when I did break that 25:13, the old world record, I knew I had a lot more in the tank. That's why I got to chomping on the bit so hard for the 2,600. And yeah, I could see that resonating with me. Yeah, no, for sure. For sure. But well, if that happens, it happens. And that could definitely push me to the next level. So I totally appreciate your input.
I'll just keep pushing. Your wife will hate me because I'll just keep pushing you. Just like, man, all-time record's kind of crazy.
Oh yeah.
But now let's go to let's switch it up a little bit to the money meets. Is the fact, so you said, I do remember there was a little bit of chirping because you said your initial, was it the sleeved world record where you set it at a smaller meet?
Yeah.
There was one where you said a smaller meet, and I remember some people were kind of putting pressure on as far as like, hey, do that big dog, but you were gonna do big dogs, right? Or Kern. Yeah. So as far as those money meets go, does that have any influence on your decisions now? Because I mean, even family wise, I mean, I definitely would imagine it would make the equation more difficult if I mean, you could literally win 40,000. Is it somewhere around there?
Yeah, that's what it was for the Kern this year. It's supposed to be.
Yeah. So is it now gone? So they're just not doing it at all?
Yeah, canceled it for good. They were going to do the end of November, but they canceled it. Yeah. And
did they cancel it permanently, like for all years?
Yeah. Well, no. I mean, it might be back in 2021.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure they're talking about plans for it already. But it's funny because, like I said earlier, I've only done 4 sleeved meets, and I knew about the showdown around this time last year. The meet director he was throwing around the idea of it when and Sean Doyle was like, "Hey, let's go ahead and head up to showdown meet." I'm like, "Oh, it sounds great, man." got a hold of the meet director. Hey, how's it going? He's like, hey, you got to qualify. You haven't done a sleep meet since 2017. And I'm like, really? Like, I didn't play that card. And he's like, yeah. I'm like, you know what? Thank you. I appreciate, you're sticking to your guns and you're making it this for everybody all across the board, making it somewhat equal. So I inevitably, found this meet that was close. And I had plans for the November 25-18. And so I finished that. And then I kind of made plans for the sleep meet, but I wasn't worried about it. I was going to hit openers, qualify, and then hit the road. And, it kind of got under my skin that he was trying to make me qualify. And then there was a couple other people, chirping, the internet, being the internet. Yeah. So got in there and I hit my 410 opener, and super, super easy. Then I went to 970 on my second, and it was too easy. So I knew I would have regretted it if I hadn't tried to squat a grand on that day. And of course, I hit a bench PR too, 579, and then I pulled 903. So, just, when you're firing on all cylinders, you might as well go. That's the way I looked at that. It was a smaller meet, but I still like to let my lifts do the talking for me. They look clean, kind of got a validation from the people that mattered, and that's that. Nobody said they're going to take my world record away from me yet. So,
So how does that affect the second half of it, though, of the question, as far as, let's say these money meets keep popping up? Is there any thought that, like, look, first of all, those money meets, I imagine, will not exist forever, since I might be wrong on this, but to me, it does seem like an unsustainable model. I would have to imagine, right? Like it has to be a net loss for them, right?
I would imagine. I would say net loss, but they're probably coming out even.
Not even?
Yeah, I don't think they do it if they weren't making anything more publicity than being money. But that's
because it's very interesting culturally, because in the USAPL and IPF we're kind of always taught, like, hey, these meets are super expensive, like, don't worry about the bottom line, like, no, we'll take care of it. They don't disclose how much meet directors make, by the way, like, by the rules they don't have to at all. In the USAPL, which, I mean, to me at that point, when it's a nonprofit and all that, you can always fudge things, and it's like, it's very suspicious. Like, it's very. I've heard rumors of like $50,000 profit, just boom to the person, and that's it, or more.
Yeah.
It's just funny. Yeah, it's funny culturally how it's like we view it almost the opposite. Whereas you're like, why can't you just keep doing the money meets? Whereas I think, like, how does that even exist?
Yeah, and I am pretty grateful that they are having them, and there's a good amount of people that are paying, for the competition, but there's a good amount of companies that are sending athletes out there too. So it's just like the give and the take isn't really, worth it. And I'm not mad as long as I can.
So let's say to this, like, to the practical part of this, let's say they continue to do 40,000 or more. Would you do the meet each year as long as it's at least 40,000? Because I mean that's a big prize, even if you don't have to necessarily set a world record.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 40K is a good number. It definitely makes me think a little bit more. I mean, even 10,000 is a good weekend. Like, I still, I don't mind viewing it still as a hobby. So if I can go make $10,000 off doing what I love and what I enjoy on a good weekend, and I say wasting, because the training days are what the days I enjoy almost more than the platform days. Just having a great time with all your training partners and whatever. I think it'd keep me out of retirement a little bit longer. But I still have a good day job too, so I don't mind that one bit.
Yeah. So for those who don't know you personally, you work as a mechanic, right?
Yes.
And you balance that with powerlifting. How has you mentioned the tough times? How have you developed in terms of time management? And do you ever have days of training where it's just you just have to get it in, and somehow you just fit it in regardless? And kind of how mentally do you manage that? Like, have you developed that skill more and more? Because I think that's something a lot of people relate to now. Even smaller natural guys spend so much time in the gym since they train perhaps with a little bit more volume or frequency. So really, how have you mastered that time management?
Yeah, I think I've kind of been, I'd say blessed with how lazy I can be. especially in the peaking phase, you get in and out in 45 minutes to an hour. But when you got the more volume, it does, eats up most of your day, and that it can be stressful. But I'm lucky enough with my job, I get to work all night if I have to. So those longer days, if I got to cut it short in the gym, or if I got to take it longer in the gym, just means I got to work later at night. And my wife understands. I don't mind it, especially down here in Florida where it's 95 during the day. So if I got to work at night, it's a little cooler, a little less pressure, no traffic, stuff like that. So it's balancing. It's been a pain, and it was a learning process when we started out. But it's been something I've been getting away with. My job loves me. I've been there 2 years, and still doing decent in powerlifting, I guess.
Yeah. So that actually is also something I've been thinking about. Is it a myth when people say that Russians, especially on the untested side, I've heard a lot of people imply that they lift full time, but then I've heard that that's actually not true. Do you know, since you're a little bit more in that world, do you know if a guy like Andre and those guys you're competing against and you're the top dog, do they just straight up lift all the time, or do they have side jobs totally, or main jobs?
I've heard of rumors of government funding, but I don't know if it's true. Like 100%, I haven't really gone out of my way to ask. I know, like Wayne Howlett, he's always had a day job. He was a security guy for a while, but like he's Australia, but even some Australians are that way too. Like they take it full time and they'll just do like kind of coaching on the side. But as far as the Russians, that's just a different breed of human. I like to think, but yeah, I mean, I know Andre did most of his stuff off the seminar, but I know he had a job prior. I think he was like the single ply days. I think he was stocking grocery shelves and stuff like that. So it's just how you find the balance and who you can get to pay the bills.
It's really, that balance is really interesting, especially with you balancing the marriage and the family. I think that's something that, to me, it almost seems like people don't emphasize enough, especially with the untested side of the sport, because it's like you really have to decide what your values are, especially with body weight. Like that's why I know it can get weird when I brought up body weight with Ray, and I'm genuinely curious. Like you really do have to make certain decisions where you're like, okay, what am I going to do with this? How, because you are incentivized to push things to a level that perhaps nobody's ever pushed things. I mean, nobody's seen, what are the effects or how heavy people should get. Actually in the IPF, I don't know if you've checked, but like the body weight of super heavyweight lifters used to be 360, like across the board for quite a bit. Like Ray was 365, Jezza was 365, somewhere around there. And then Ray got up to 405, and then Jezza got up to like 395, and then Kelly Branton got up to like 395, and then Ray got to 419, and it kind of becomes this race. Yeah. So actually, that's what I want to ask you as far as body weight goes, is would there ever be a time where you consider like, look, if I just weigh 420, I'm going to squat 500 kilos with sleeves? Like, what if you could just be straight up with sleep, maybe like a 530 wrapped squat? Would you consider
that? Since like till now is really, I'm comfortable at 390, and I manage it well. I sleep great. I've been this weight probably a year and a half now, and I enjoy it. My strength's great. Going for the next kilo, just to like sacrificing the body weight for the next kilo at this stage would be pretty far stretched for me. And plus, it's kind of easy for me to maintain. I don't have to go overboard and gorge myself force feed like I did to get up here, and just to maintain around this weight's good for me. I remember getting here, like I was uncomfortable the first time I hit 390, and then dropped down to 370, and like kind of slowly progressed my way back up to 390. And that's just the way I've always been. I did that when I first got to 370. I did that when I first got to 350. I know I'd be a lot more comfortable at 300, but I'm pretty comfortable with my 1,000-pound squats and 900-pound deadlifts too. So it's just the give or take on what your goal is. I like 390. The wife likes 390. We're good. Yeah.
So let's say you get to that point of what we talked about as far as the money meets, but let's say you get to the gray area where you're like, look, I pushed the records up on both ends of the spectrum with reps and with sleeves. And let's say you're still in the running very clearly to win the 40,000 to 10,000. At that point, would you then try to get your body weight as low as you can while still winning and then go to like 355? Or would you just stay 390 flat? Which one of those?
Yeah, I definitely see myself. I think that is my plan after November is probably 355, 330, get comfortable, athletic. I don't say athletic, but not so round again.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's
that's going to help me health-wise too in the long run.
Yeah.
Just well as all of us, man. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's funny actually I've had like rants about that on Instagram where it's funny how even with like smaller natural lifters, there's always this push to just say like, all right, now it's time for you to move up a class, time for you to do that. But then your identity gets so wrapped into it. Yeah. So as far as your training style, let's pivot to that now. First of all, how often do you squat, bench, and deadlift within the week? Just flat.
Hey, I've benching on Thursday, and actually 1 week I go close grip, the next week I go competition grip. Usually when I go close grip, I do an overhead accessory on top, going heavier, and then I squat every other Sunday, and I deadlift every other Sunday. Just intermix them. It really depends on where I'm at in the peaking cycle or the off season, on whether I have another lower body accessory day or not. And my Mondays always stay the same. It's back and bicep, bodybuilding movements, higher rep, blood flow type stuff.
Yeah. So you said so basically you squat once every 2 weeks. Did I get that right? Okay. That's very interesting. Was that at all motive or influenced by Lillibridge? Because that's very similar to his initial program. Like I remember reading it like 7 years ago. Was he motivation for that?
Yeah, he was my first coach.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Does he coach you now?
No, not at all.
Okay.
No, it's
are you coach now?
No, I'm overlooked, but I'm not real coached. I 9 times out of 10, I run everything by Ed Cohn. If I'm gonna make a drastic change, or if I feel like there could be improvement, he's became a pretty good friend of mine over the last 4 or 5 years. And because we lived somewhat so close and we knew a bunch of the same people, we had a lot of interactions, and it just kind of fell into that. Not a bad guy to have in your corner,
Yeah. Has Ed Cohn influenced you on technique at all?
Yeah, definitely, yeah, a lot.
Yeah. So, what were you guys saying?
Especially with the squat, he's helped me a lot with that, opening up. He understands my joints and my leverages, and where I'm gonna thrive the most at, and where I'm not gonna get hurt at either.
Okay. Yeah. So as far as technique goes, what is your favorite cue for each of the big three? So like what's your number one cue that you're thinking? So in the squat, in the bench, and in the deadlift.
The squat's got to be back and out, like throwing my knees out hard, because I'm sure you noticed, and most people do, I'm a pretty narrow stance squatter. So the harder and faster I can get my knees spread out, whether it be, I try to stay somewhat over the initial part of my toes, but the harder and the faster I can do that, the more rebound I'll get from my hamstrings and keep it up there. But in my mind, when I think about that, I also think about tightening my core. So that helps a lot on the same time. So when I think knees out, I think tight core at the same time. And that's helped me stay a lot upright in my squats and stuff like that. With bench, it's got to be chest up, because keeping my thoracic higher, and for a guy that's 390 pounds, I do have a pretty stellar arch. Yeah. So there's no real lack of mobility in the bottom end of my spine. It's really been nice. And I've noticed, of course, shortened my range of motion. So that's a beautiful thing too. But when I get it to work, and with my leverages and everything like that, it works out pretty great. Deadlifts, I try not to think, to be honest with you. Yeah, grip and rip, but I've found over the last 2 years slowing down and actually paying attention to make, like, that's been my biggest thing with deadlifts. I don't know if there's a strict cue that I have that's specific, but before I was really emotional with the deadlifts, and which technically conventional, you have to be a lot more than sumo. Sumo is so technical, and if you're not, so that's why I think that it's fell off with me lifting with a bunch of sumo guys now. It's helped me a ton with setting up setting up my technique. And I've dabbled with it. I think I pulled 365 for a double sumo a couple times, 804. But it's definitely helped me slow down and critique and perfect every cue that I have. Those definitely got to be the top three for me, and just execution. We all know how to do it, but just doing it's a story.
Yeah, so actually stemming off of that is, what is your favorite accessory for each lift? So let's start with the deadlift, since you mentioned technique and staying tight in the bottom. Is there a particular accessory, especially if it's a barbell accessory, that really gives you uniquely good carryover?
Pause squats.
Pause squats? Really, for the deadlift?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Focusing on that, focus on keeping your back tight has really been huge, especially lower lats and just squeezing, packing them down. It helps me a ton, especially with the way I pull the conventional, the leverages that I have, a tall torso, short legs, great squatter, not a great deadlifter.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because what I'm trying to figure out is why guys like Jezo Wepa, for example, in IPF, he has a huge squat. And let me bring it kind of a counter to you on that. Obviously, it's your experience, but he's a guy where he could probably pause squat damn near 1,000, right? I mean, he's squatted 1,000 straight up. He's front squatted 880, I believe. And he probably could pause squat, let's say, at least 935. So what is the difference between a guy like that and a guy like yourself, where it is fascinating that you out deadlift him by like 200 pounds. So it's like, what is the difference there? Why do you think you've managed your leverages despite being somewhat similar of a build?
Oh, I'm pretty sure he's only 5'6", 5'7".
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I'm 6'2". The length on in my hands, I have noticed, and I've watched Jezza quite a bit. He does have the shorter fingers, but other explosiveness, I think that has a lot to do with it. I mean, not saying now at 34 I got a lot of speed, but when I was 24 I sure did. And that explosiveness really, it's got a great carryover from my squat too. So just that the explosiveness off the floor, engaging the hamstrings a lot more. It's tough. Like, look at Derek Kendall. You know, that guy, he's squatted 1050, but he can barely pull 700 off the floor. But
same thing with Kelly Branton also, because he was also not particularly short. He did have like shorter arms, definitely relative, but he was struggling with low seven. So actually, mentally, does that ever get in your head where it's like there's almost this expectation that a super heavy should just not care and just let it tank? Does that ever get in your head, or do you just know, like, okay, no, I know I'm a good puller relative to my squat?
Oh yeah, definitely. And like, I had so much focus on those two in the beginning because I don't want to say I gave up on my bench, but I was just so pissed about it staying at 450 to 500, right around there. But I was just so mad about it that I made squat and dead such a priority to if I got good carryover from pause squats on my deadlift, I'm also getting good at squats, because I was going to say one of my favorite accessories for squats is pause squats too. And I think that helped my explosiveness a lot with that. Favorite accessory for bench has got to be incline. It's just because I've caught so much carryover from it, and that has a lot to do with Ed. Ed's like, do incline for a couple weeks, you'll hit a great bench. And since then, I've just skyrocketed. I really went from under sub 500, almost 6 now in 3 years.
Yeah. So what? How much weight do you incline, by the way, for like a 5 to 10 rep set?
Well, the most I've done 405 for 8. I use that's a good like normal range. I think 455 for 5 one time, but I was peaked out pretty hard with that. But yeah, it's like just right around that range. But when I do overhead, I do more focus on reps. So it's like, you know, a couple sets of 225 for 25 or 50, or like there'll be a lot of days where I'll go in and just like do close grip bench and then go hit 135 for 100. Don't care how many sets it takes, get to 100. And I think that's also helped me quite a bit with not tearing my pec. The long tendons through your chest is you know, it's got to be something you focus on, especially when you're getting in the higher weights.
Wow. So specifically, you said it doesn't matter how many sets it takes. How many sets does it normally take in that circumstance? And also, what level of difficulty would you go to if it did take multiple sets?
Oh, it's usually 4 to 5 sets. Try to
okay.
around.
So like where, let's say, this is fascinating. It's like, let's say if we were to do that, would you? So on the first set, do you go to truly to no reps in the tank, rack it, and then wait? Or do you go to like where it's like 3 reps in the tank, rack it, and then go?
Oh no, it's full burnouts.
Full burnout. Yeah. Okay.
Try to get as close to 30 as I can, and then just whatever I got. Sometimes they'll pull it off me if they have to. Wait about a minute and get back to it.
Man, that's kind of like have you heard the term myo reps?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of like that, exactly, right?
Yeah.
So what else was I gonna say? Oh yeah. Do you ever pause deadlift or stiff leg deadlift or deficit deadlift? So do you do none of those?
Deficit. I do a lot of it's especially in the off season. I stay away from a belt and just like I don't really like block pulls or like wagon wheel deadlifts. I'm not a big fan of that. But even if I'm having a bad day, I'll go deficit deadlift because that's I get a good stretch off of that too, and it forces you to fully lock your back in to engage and use your hamstrings. So yeah, I do like deficits.
Yeah, that makes sense. As far as beltless goes and let's say specificity, do you start a cycle doing singles from the start? It's very similar to what I asked Ray, where he said he actually starts a cycle beltless completely for the first like 2 weeks of a 5-week cycle. Do you do it where it's more the theme of the cycle is beltless and then it's an off season that's just beltless, or do you do it like that where you're within a cycle, you start out perhaps beltless and then add a belt midway through?
Yeah, 9 times out of 10, off season's all completely beltless. But when I get into any kind of cycle, I put a belt on, especially if we're going sub 80% around that area. But I do notice the farther out I am from peaking, like say 6 weeks prior, I take my time putting the belt on. So I'll wait till 75 to 80% to put it on and just kind of grind through those 70% without it on, just to activate it a lot more and force myself to use it.
So when you are peaking for meet, do you do the singles weekly? Is that something that you do or no?
No, I try to stay in a good rep range, like 4 to 3 rep range, usually between 12 and 6 weeks out. Then 5 weeks out is when I start going to the singles if I have to. Okay. And 9 times out of 10, I go by feel, honestly. So if it's good, I'm gonna give it another rep. So I got good speed. The other day, my last heavy bench, 575, and my PR is 584. And I hit that 575 and it flew, and my spotter went to grab the bar, and I just took it out of his hands and took it again. So if it's there, you got to go with it. Just because it's meet day too.
Yeah, that brings me to: do you use RPE percentage or something that's not even really either of those? They're just like how you're saying. Is it totally by feel, or do you specifically track RPE or percentages?
Not at all. Well, percentages definitely. Yeah, definitely percentages. And I go off attempted or projected third attempts. I've got lucky enough to where probably 75% of the time that I've done that, I've made my projected third attempt my second at the end of the peaking cycle, which, knock on wood, it's worked out this far. But you have a bad day too. Yeah, I'm real big on percentages. RPE never really got into that kind of feel, I guess you could say, because we'll have good days and we'll have bad days.
Mhm. Yeah, and I'd imagine, especially as guys get stronger, it does seem to be a theme that the really super heavies and the guys pushing the most absolute weight um, don't, at least from my knowledge, seem to use RP. And I do wonder if it also has to do with the fact that the jumps are so big
Yeah.
that I would imagine it's probably pretty hard to judge what exactly, like if you or Ray squats like 900, it's like I would imagine it's hard to actually think like, okay, what even is that? Um, actually, does bring me to something I want to ask you is that what amount of reps do you think you could do with 800 if you just did an AMRAP on squat?
My
Just
legs,
flat.
my legs would probably give out about 12 to 15, but my,
Yeah, that'd be crazy.
my lungs are going to give out about 8, maybe. 8 would be a good number on a good healthy day, maybe with some bronchade. I don't know.
Yeah, have you ever just thought about that? They're like, look, I am the strongest man in powerlifting. If I just did some out of pocket stupid set and posted it online and tagged like powerlifting motivation and King of List, that would probably get shared everywhere.
That my 455 for 4, it went everywhere. That was really nuts. But that was it was right after Duffin's 1,000 for 3. So I was like, man, I just got something to prove. I guess today, but I don't know. That was kind of cool. There, a lot of people did go pretty nuts about that. But when I'm peaking, I got numbers in mind the whole time, and I don't really like to go off track, especially if they're going really well.
That's a unique trait in today's world. Where I mean, it's actually kind of funny that you brought up how since you started so late, that then as far as the natural route, that then it makes less sense. And there's almost an irony that now it's a lot of people start very early, but due to the fact that the junior division cuts off at 23, so many people burn out before they even reach 24. I mean, it's like so many people are out of the sport where they just never post again. I mean, I was getting close to that point. Luckily, I brought it back, but it's yeah. And it's interesting how it's like what is cool about powerlifting is as long as you're patient and intelligent with your training, and maybe even that's not even the right way of putting it. It's as long as you're disciplined with putting off pleasure. I guess it would be delayed gratification. Really, it seems like the theme more than anything. That then you get to do everything on your terms, because then if you hit that sleeve total, break 25, then you get to do the reps. Whereas if you just miss the 2,500 total, I would imagine then it kind of like bucks momentum going into the reps. Yeah, does it?
Not to mention you do mentally for sure. And
yeah,
just that alone. And I've been in the middle of cycles where my head wasn't in it at all, and I was like, man, do I give up or do I keep going? You can either, I don't. I've said it to plenty of guys where you can either let it fuck you or you can fuck it. That's just the way you got to look at it. It's just there's such a huge difference from numbers from juniors to open too. So I could get it could be deterring.
Yeah. So what actually has helped you the most day to day with staying motivated, with being inspired? Are there particular lifters that you look to now that really motivate you to get going? Or is it more in person that you're motivated? I guess so. I'll give you 3 options. I'll give you one option is you're motivated by the outside competition. So you're seeing like, hey, this guy's doing this online. I'm gonna kick his ass. Number 2 is you just the team environment of people near you, like you said, Ed, people like that, just caring. Or number 3 is it just more of a solo thing where it's like, look, this is my time. I already love this. I don't care about any of that.
Yeah, it's more been number 3. Before it was fun. It was a lot more fun climbing to the top, but being here, it's just like, who do I got to wait on? What else is what else is going to push me, or what other avenues can I use powerlifting for to suffice? What's going to fill my bucket? Really. Now it's more numbers in my head that I want. I want to be untouchable, but if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it's just like, let me get some motivation from somewhere else. It's almost in a searching mode, you could say.
Wow. That's interesting. That's really sobering that it's like once you finally reach that pinnacle, then you just look around and it's where do you go from there? You just keep pushing it more. Actually, what is the gap right now with sleeves and wraps from you to second place of active lifters now? Let's not even just say all-time records, but is it like 50 pounds or so?
Yeah, Ray is 24.58 and I'm 24.78. And then Peter Petras, he's 24.66 and I'm 25.18.
Wow,
I got a feeling he's stirring something up just by he's kind of like Andre where he doesn't really post much training online, and if he does, it's kind of hit or miss. You don't know what he's got going on, and he won't tell you what his plans are as far as meat wise, but that's okay. That's powerlifting. But I got a feeling he's gonna try to give it a good chase here pretty soon. Luke Nall, he's got a good shot. If he has a perfect day, he's doing a meet in October. It's he hasn't done many meets, so he doesn't have really the platform experience that you'd see out of guys that would put up huge numbers. His gym lifts are great, but we both know that it'll only take you so far.
Yeah, actually, what has helped you so much with being a good meet day performer? Is there anything that you do that perhaps your competition doesn't, as far as maybe not overshooting in training, or even like is there anything you do specific to stay relaxed during the meet itself?
I'm really focused on just having a good time. Since Rum 8 was in D-Land, Florida. Actually, I now live 20 minutes away from there, but I didn't know anybody, and they had the Battle of the 220s. T. Cummins, Kevin Oak, all those huge name guys were down here, and I was so nervous. And this was like my first big meet, and I was sweating in the back room. Like I literally got in the sauna with Dan Green, T. Cummins, like Kevin Oak, and all these guys, and I had like 0.3 pounds to worry about, which I just fell asleep, woke up, weighed in, and I've been fine. And these guys are dropping 20, 30 pounds to get to 220. Wanted to be a part of it. But then like I was so nervous during that meet. I was like fidget with my fingers. I played the circle game with like a bunch of guys from Jacksonville. Like I was just so nervous, and I found out that I wouldn't perform that way. And I saw like Chris Bridgeford, he like just didn't perform that great when he wasn't having a good time. I saw that like firsthand. Like you got to have fun doing this, otherwise you're just not going to perform. That's just the way I felt. So I noticed then, that was 5 years ago now. It's just like keep it fun, keep it a hobby. And now at the tribute meet in July, after second attempt squat, I went in the back, grabbed the cooler, and started drinking beer. I was like, hey, the hard part's over. I'm just here for a good time now. So yeah, you gotta keep it light, man. And what's the point of doing it if you ain't having fun? You know, none of us are. I won't say none of us, but we're not all getting rich off the sport. We're not all just like, you can't let it consume you. And I like partying, so let's do it.
That's awesome. That's an awesome message, especially to probably my audience too. Is that I think the USAPL IPF side is more prone to the opposite of that, where it's like more prone to the really. I always tell people it's like if you feel like if you did poorly in a meet and you would be embarrassed, I think that's the trademark of a bad attitude. Is that it's not like and I think we've probably all been there where there was a time where it was literally embarrassing, where we're like I feel like almost shame. I mean, honestly, I remember one time I bombed out of a meet. And I actually remember feeling kind of the opposite, where like I went with my dad to Texas in 2014. It's like all we did was go to Killeen, Texas for this meet, and I bombed out in squats, and then that was it. it's like for that to be the whole trip, and you're like, all right, I just completely ruined it all. And the funny thing is it reminds me a lot of Dave Chappelle. What he said before is that he said that the moment you bomb out, you just look around and you're just like, this guy isn't that bad. Like, this is the worst thing that you ever feared. And you just look around, just like, hey, you're still here. It's fine. You just move on. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's because, man, I mean, I remember, actually, do you remember George Lehman?
Oh, yeah.
When he was big on Saucing, it's so weird how you can get such a bad mindset because I remember it kind of resonated with me to some extent as far as like the stress, where he was talking about how there was a time when he was warming up for the American record deadlift, he was kind of hoping he would tear his hamstring so he wouldn't even have to go on. And I remember that both sounded nuts, but I do also kind of get it. That's like you almost wish you just had an excuse to not even go out there because it's like just so pent up and you're just so worried you just got suck and have it not figured out.
Like, especially like right now, 2 weeks out, it's when it kind of I would say kind of hits me the most. But like I've been hearing a little bit of the podcast from King of the Lifts, like Garrett Fear, and talking about the showdown meet that's coming up, and you get $10,000 purse, and inevitably it's me versus John Hack. I've known John for 5 years. Great guy. Yeah, John and I are good friends, but that comes down to it. It's still who's gonna have the highest looks on that day.
What did Garrett say on that?
Oh, he just said that I was really the only person that John was worried about as far as being the best, because he's like, okay, I totaled, or when I took the sleeves world record, I had a 613 Wilks, and John was at 610, and that was the highest sleeve Wilks ever. And inevitably, I mean, I get it; it makes sense. That's what John's worried about, and don't get me wrong, I'm worried about it too. But just the stress of it's like, it's really worth it. Standing in the shower crying, it's like, man, this sucks. Not to mention, I mean, there's a lot of drugs that play a good role in your mentally too. And if I remember like the first couple of years of doing or being powerlifting and being on, like I would almost think that my mind was like going crazy. The anxiety, the no sleep, and just the stuff like that. It's like, why do you do it yourself? But then grab your trophy and see what your total is at the meet. It's just like, all right, this is why I do it. Like, what?
Yeah. It's funny is do you think the fact that you've done so many meets helped you with this?
Definitely, 100%. Yeah, 1,000%. Oh yeah, it's so funny because I see every time like I go to a meet, and I don't know, I'm such a fan of the sport, and I do love everything about it, and I love progression in it. That the way we are going, slower now with COVID, but the way the sport is going, I still help as much as I can. In the warm-up room, talking to kids with newbies, and talking to guys that have been doing this but are having a hard time getting a good start. And it's just like, relax, have a good time. Let's do this. Like stuff like fist bumping kids that are squatting 400, and I'm about 400 pounds. I'm about to do 400 kilos. Stuff like that. And I see and I get messages about that all the time about how that helps them, and that's something that I'd much rather pass that on along with the totals that I'm going to come up with too. It's just a little bit more gratifying. It makes it worth it.
That's awesome. Yeah, and that's actually is that with your wife? Is she into powerlifting?
No, not at all. She was actually funny because that's how we met. 2015, her boyfriend was spotting and loading at a meet that I went and won. And yeah, pretty funny. Oh, and then like it wasn't until a couple years later that we actually got together and everything was cool. But yeah, it was pretty funny how that happened. Not so much anymore, and I don't mind it. She's a fan. She knows what's going on. She knows, she's been through the hoops with me with multiple meets now, and she knows how I act and what I need and how to be the perfect wife when it comes down to it, in and off the platform, honestly. But yeah, I'm okay with her not being a competitive powerlifter too. It's not always a bad thing. I always say she's like kind of the yin to the yang, because she's a vegan. She's real big into like plants and being real earthy. I guess typical vegan. But I'm the complete opposite. I'm the mechanic powerlifter. So it's just like yeah.
So when you guys have kids, let's say 14 years down the road, would you be the type would you encourage specifically powerlifting, or would you just be like, look, just whatever you want to do, and more kind of generic sports first? Because let me just make the brief case here, because I think a lot of people tend to go to opening up things, but I do think it's compelling that Ernie Lillibridge basically did train his sons from start to now, and I mean, it obviously worked very well for both of them. Yeah, as far as being very successful in the sport. So, which route do you see yourself in with that?
Yeah, I was never really pigeonholed from my parents, and I don't really think I would do that. I have a brother he's 18 now, and he's been on the platform a couple times. He likes it. He's pretty strong, but I think he's more concerned about making money right now than being a competitive powerlifter, and I never pushed it on him. Of course, I helped him, and I don't think I would do that. And the weight training and just being physically active, yeah, I'll definitely push that on. I'll push that on anybody, But other than like competitive powerlifting, if you want to do it. Yeah, I'll guide you the whole way, but I don't think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Also, I want to ask how have you stayed relatively injury-free during your recent run? Because I'd say right now you really haven't. I mean, it seems like you've been increasing your total. The IT band one was a while ago, right?
Yeah.
It seems like you've been incident-free for a little while.
Yes, really. Since then, I've just tore the fascia of my bicep twice since IT band, and that was one was in 17, and one was they were both in 2017, and that was low bar squatting. But I just really think it has to do a lot with my training and throttling back and feeling your body. If something doesn't feel right, I don't push it. And but I'm also pretty big on leaving the gym on a positive note. So say like, squats don't go. I'm warming up in squats, something doesn't feel right. Then I go in the other room and hit like a low leg press PR or a hack press PR or a leg extension PR or something like that. So I've always had that kind of principle to where if the main movements aren't going great for me, don't get hurt. Just go leave on a good note. And another factor, it's kind of rough during the peaky phase, and sometimes you got to grunt through it and pray for the best. But I've just really been really big on just feeling it out and not overdoing it. I see so many guys that just want to grit their teeth and push through all this pain and stuff and to the, grind or die or all the bullshit. But it's also a good way to get hurt too. And a little patience goes a long way.
Yeah. So how many sets do you do when you squat? How many sets do you do total on your quads, just generally? Because you said, let's say you hit the main squat. Do you hit your primary squat, then a pause squat after, or is that on a separate day? That would be a separate day. So you hit your main squat, then what after?
I can give you two kind of examples. Like, for instance, tomorrow's my last heavy squat before competition. And I'll go in, stretch out 20 minutes, and that includes getting all my stuff on my knee sleeves. That's a chore itself. First set 315 and just work plates. I'll usually start 315 for 415 for 3, and then when I get to 500, it's all singles until my top set. Tomorrow I will just go to 865, which would be potentially my last warm up. 925 is my opener. 970 is my second attempt. Now 970 moves great. I'm going to take 1,000, but 1014 is my goal. If 970 moves great, I take 1,000. It moves awesome. 925 could be my goal. And kind of go off my feel, especially at 14 days out. 970 doesn't move great, I shut it off. I'm done until meet day. And 3 days prior to meet, I go up to 500 just for singles, just to like loosen up all my lower extremities and kind of get the blood flowing. Now, 10 weeks out, I'm hitting the bar for a set of 10. I'm hitting 135 for a set of 10. 225 for 8, and then just slowly working my way up there to keep my stamina a lot higher.
What about on back off work? Yeah, that's more like what I mean as far as overall volume on your legs. So let's say right now you're 14 days out. When you hit that single, is that just it? Is it you hit your squat single and boom, done?
I'm out.
I'm kind of jealous of that. Somebody squats like 3x5s and stuff like I squat like a 3x5 like literally 9 days for maxing.
I see that stuff, man. I'm just like, oh, I get so wore out, and then of course I'm getting a back pump watching all your squats and stuff.
So when you're let's say 10 weeks out, you probably have a very high contrast then between styles, I'd imagine, because I imagine then off season it's got to be totally different, right? As far as just building muscle mass.
Yeah.
So then what is an example workout of, let's say, just total off season mode, but you're still, or you still competition squat year round, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so let's say that workout. So just let's say excluding warm-ups, you hit your top set, like what would the rep range be, and then how many barbell squat sets, and then how many machine work sets?
I don't like hitting the straight bar off
Really?
season at all. No, it saves my shoulders a lot, and I notice if like a safety squat bar or even the cambered bar, I get a good focus on my quads more than worrying about trying to keep my back tight, or I get a solely focus on keeping my back tight. That's I don't. That's only been since I've been like above 1,000 pounds, because prior to that I'd hit the straight bar all the time. Like, but if I'm squatting over a grand, I stay away from the squat or the straight bar as much as I can. It just tears me up too bad. Normal off season will be like 700 for 2 or 3 sets of 5. Good blood flow, and then I go into individual work. Like I might do back down sets. I don't really like back down sets, especially after going that high, like 750, 700. It just, let me go hit the leg extensions, or let me go calf raise for a little bit. Now, normally in the off season, I also have a secondary lower day where I will pause squat or deficit deadlift, depending on which week I'm on. Because like my off season and my peaking are similar, to where like 1 week I'll deficit deadlift, and then the following Tuesday I pause squat, and then the next week I'll regular squat, and then the following Tuesday I'll hit like a pause squat. So it's just they keep it somewhat similar.
So how many sets do you do if you do the leg extensions? Are you doing like 5 sets? Like,
10.
or how many?
All my accessories are 10 sets.
10 sets?
Yeah, 10
Wow,
sets,
really?
10 to 15 reps around there.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's a lot.
My Mondays have been the same exact Mondays for the last 5 years, and it stems off a little bit of the Lily Bridge program, the back and biceps, and it's all 10 sets, 10 to 15 reps. Like, I can't even talk on the phone because I'm so pumped up afterwards.
Wow.
Like, there's so much blood in my upper back and arms.
Wow. So let's take the legs as an example. So if you do, so you say you do like a top set of 5, let's say on the safety bar squat, let's say, for example, and you said typically, did you say typically you don't do like a 3x5 because typically you don't do back down, or do you mean you do 3x5 just with same weight?
Yeah, 3x5 with 700.
Okay. So like 3x5 with 700, then 10 sets of something like leg extensions. Then do you do another exercise on the quads for 10 sets also?
Not on the quads. It'll always be like leg extensions, hamstring curls, or calf raises. Those are like the 3 kind of that I stay with. I don't really try to main focus just on the quad alone with that exercises.
Yeah. So and when it comes to quads, do you find leg extensions work for you the best specifically?
Yeah. And I, just holding them and filling the quad full of blood. I do that a lot, quite frequently, almost where it's maniacal.
This is a very fascinating thing that you and Ray are both big fans of leg extensions.
Yeah.
That's something where I guarantee the percentage of my audience that does leg extensions, probably like 3%. It's probably relative enough, because like there's this weird association. Like, do you ever see those posts where like I would say realistically probably most of my audience just doesn't do them because they're more into like just kind of full body, like that type of lane. But then it's funny because then there's also kind of the other end where there are people who fearmonger leg extensions, going like, oh, it's going to tear up your knees because of sheer force and blah, 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 which is obviously, it's just bullshit, to be very clear. And I'm giving my audience credit because I do not think that they buy into that. But there is that stigma still lingering, like really in extreme fitness. Have you ever actually had people who still think that way, who interact with you, where they're just like what, you do that?
Yeah, yeah. Especially a lot of like my training partners, they're like, "What are you doing, man?" I'm just trying to get a pump. It's funny. But I think that kind of stems. That's the bodybuilding side, and that's kind of where, like, when I started powerlifting, I was bodybuilding. Like 2010, I was like 390, but a completely different 390, and then I dropped down to 240. And 2014 was when I started powerlifting, and I think I was like 287 my first meet or something like that. I was super light, and I didn't even worry about a weight cut or anything like that. I just knew I was going to be 308 since then. And I was all bodybuilding. Before my first competition, I never pulled anything over 405 without straps. But I was doing like 405 for set to 20. So I just I didn't know any better. And I think that helped me in the long run, for sure.
Yeah, actually, people kind of mean that I say. I always say that's something I was going to ask you about. Like, apparently, I said that in my last one, but I was literally going to ask you if there's anything that you've done accessory wise or something unorthodox that you think actually did build a very good base. Because it's like for some people, it's like box squats that then just kind of randomly did help, even though they don't do them now. And so the 20s was a good example. Is there anything else somewhat similar to that?
No, I was doing set to 20. I got a couple videos on my phone of me squatting 500 for set to 20.
Really?
And I had Nike shocks on, and my knee wrapped over my sweatpants. It was funny. It was funny. I think that just helped me. But at that time, I was trying to lose weight. So my goal was completely different. But so I mean, like, I definitely think that the set to 20 definitely helped me base strength and injury wise, because that's a great way to load up and protect your tendons and whatnot.
Yeah. And also with your squat technique, how did you come to such a squat style that now I think everybody recognizes you have to have strong quads to have a huge squat, and the kind of like hips back as the main cue is kind of bullshit for most people as far as like really maintaining a vertical shin. And I know there are a few people who are still advocates of a vertical shin, which to me is just stupid. And I've been questioned about stuff like that. I'm always just like, I totally disagree. Like I don't care if that gets me, in trouble or whatever. So my question to you is, since you started so early, you started literally at Westside's gym, right, for the first meet or around there. How did you avoid falling into that trap of an overly hip dominant hips back? Because that used to be the complete norm. That's actually the motivation for my channel existing, was because there was no squat style that just advocated using your quads. Like that literally is the primary reason. Sorry.
I believe it. Yeah. No, I just did what worked for me and what I could put the most weight on the bar with. Honestly, that's way I felt worked for me. I knew going wider, my adductors weren't gonna. They weren't strong enough for me to go that wide. And I do feel like this gear training that I had earlier in this year has helped me a lot more controlling my knee from going forward so hard not hard, but far on my toes. But I know I still need that to be able to get my hips back and down as far as I need to. So it just works. I'm not not going to try to fix something that's not broken. And I have tried wider squats, and it just I don't get more weight on the bar. What's the point if I'm not putting more weight on
it? That takes some maturity, because I think a lot of us have been in positions where it's like we've wanted to try something, like we wanted to cue something that kind of wasn't working, and then still force it. And there's a surprising amount. I mean, I even remember, and this is not at all due to his fault or anything, but I remember Max Aeta. Do you know who he is?
Yeah,
he's a juggernaut coach, and I remember him even mentioning he's like he naturally has very strong quads, similar to yourself, and he's like. I remember him saying that the moment he started powerlifting, like they told him, look, you got to sit back, you put the bar low. And then I think he tore an adductor. And it's like a lot of people just kind of go until they find out, like, wow, this just ruined my year. So the fact that you were able to so you were pretty quick with being able to just go, look, I'm just going to do my own thing. And do you think that actually has to do with some of what you said earlier, as far as you said you are more self-motivated. You aren't necessarily influenced by the team first. Do you think that helps you with those decisions to not be a victim of the trends?
Yes, and yeah, I do. I remember the first time Ernie Sr. told me I'd never squat over 800 because I was so quad dominant.
Really?
That was pretty fuel to my fire. I remember that, and I think like the next week I squatted 854, and I was just like, oh, now what, man? Definitely. But now the team I have now, they're so open-minded to doing what makes work for them, and I think that's fell off on a few of them trying conventional or trying squatting a little narrower and stuff like that, or being more hip dominant in their squats compared to being as wide as they were prior. Yeah, it works. It's not broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, and speaking of that, how much could you front squat, you think, if you pushed it for a 1 rep max? If you gave it an 8-week cycle and you said, look, I want to front squat the most in human history, do you think you could do it? You think you could overtake Jezza Wapa's front squat?
Oh, no doubt. I guarantee it. If I wanted, for sure. But the most I've ever done is 705, and it's a different angle. It's tough. There's a reason not a lot of people do it, but I think I could. I mean, I know Derek, he was knocking on. I think in the year that Derek tore his hamstring, he was supposed to do like 900 or 950 in the cage front squat, and that was like kind of the end of Derek after that. But yeah, I bet I could. It'd be fun, but just who knows? Good. Thanks for putting that in my mind. Now I'm like,
yeah. So if you did it, would it be with wraps and try to push like what would it be, like 920 plus? What do you think? What would even just be in the realm of just the range?
Just to be able to say you front squatted a grand, that'd be cool.
Grand.
That'd be cool. I mean, 905 would be cool, but just saying that you did a grand would be like, oh yeah, come at me.
That'd be actually. Let's wrap this thing up with. We still have some questions here, so this isn't like the outro. But let's go out of. So we're in programming. I think we've the programming, especially with you, I really wanted to get in depth, since I think truly not that many people know what you do, just flat out, and you are the strongest sprout. Like, I see that as important to just document it, honestly, so people can look back on it. Now, when it comes to some of the more fun questions, this is going to be more opinionated, so just lay back. Okay, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you offend someone or anything like that. Now, my last video was entitled "The Greatest Squat in Human History." Some people don't agree with that, and it's totally fine. This is an open thing here. In your opinion, who does have the greatest squat in history? Flat out.
Gotta go by weight. I mean, that's powerlifting, so it's got to be Vlad. Whether it be his 515 or his 505, that's kind of a toss-up. I mean, he didn't finish the meet, so it shouldn't count, but still 500 kilos. You got to give it to him. It's a lot of weight. It's a lot of weight. Now, in sleeves, Jessa, he did 500 in training, but Ray still got it at 1082.
But Jessa did 500 with a screenshot of it, correct?
Yeah, I know.
I mean, let's be very clear. We have no idea if he did 500, or how it looked. But I mean, it's a possibility.
Yeah, and even if he did, I'd still give it to Ray. Just how clean is that 1082 was so clean. It was such a beautiful squat.
So from your experience, how much do you think, if someone like Ray used wraps, how much do you think he would squat? Because that's actually someone was putting the heat on me on that. And his point was that since Ray slows up so high up, that he probably actually would not get that much out of wraps. Now, you have more experience, especially at that high level, than possibly anyone as far as these types of weights, other than like flat. So what do you think?
It's like saying momentum doesn't work. Like, honestly, because all that wrap's going to do is spring your legs straight. So Oh, he slows down at the top. Everybody slows down at the top. He's done. Yeah, I'm gonna say Ray can around. It takes some time, but Ray can easily go 11, 20, easy with a good set of reps, and he knew how to use them. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that'd be huge. So as far as your goals, are you targeting after with Vlad, the fact that he has the biggest squat, but he bombed out on deadlifts? Is that going to be a goal of yours to break his unofficial squat as well? Or are you just focused on the official?
I just want the total.
Total?
Yeah, I'm not, whatever it takes to give, because I mean, we kind of went over it a little earlier. Vlad couldn't deadlift either. So he can't really, like the squat isn't my main goal. My eyes, powerlifting is the top. So, or not, the powerlift, the total is what the king stuff. So it's about all three, there's all kinds of one-trick ponies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the fact that a lot of those one-trick ponies too get a lot of viewership from that is really, it's one of those things where it's like that is almost a market force that we have to resist on some level, because I know for myself, especially if I pulled sumo very wide with straps and with a deadlift bar, it's like it could be. I fully believe I could get 70 pounds out of it. I fully believe that, and it'd be. I think I could pull 770 in the gym at 183 with that, and not ever make it in a meet. And it's like it's weird how you see the pressure, because it's like I just see how much people love that, and there are some lifters who I could name who are in a very similar lane who truly do indulge in that path, and then it just. You really have nowhere to go after that, though. That's what's interesting. So I think the fact that you're going for total, I would have to imagine if all is just in the world, that then that would make everything age better and your legacy age better and longer than someone who kind of just goes for that one trick.
Yeah.
And actually, this is also something that's totally subjective, is would you rather be the best lifter for, let's say, a 3-year run, and let's say you have the record, but then after 3 years it gets broken and then that was it? Or would you rather be this next year you set the world record so crazy it's the record for next 20 years, but immediately after next year you're kind of out the sport?
Yeah, I do want to be untouchable, and I do want the longevity. Andre's so well known because of his longevity. And
well, you have to pick one. You have to pick one. Let's say, because we gotta make this tough. You have the record where it's like that has not. What it's kind of like is, do you remember when Don Reinhout had the 909 or something around, or when Ray squatted 909, it surpassed his without wraps. And I remember that was one of those records where it's like that's been there for a long time as far as without wraps. Yeah, and he did that without sleeves to give him even more credit.
Yeah,
but it also was untested. Ray was tested, so there's differences in all directions. But it was like that was a good example. That's one where the moment that happened, you had to go like, wait, who is that? Like, and then it's like a history lesson. So you either get to be that, because honestly, probably I know he's a successful strongman and successful overall, but it's like there are those feats where that probably ages better than a 5-year run in this sport and then 3 years in here. So would you rather be that legend status for that number and then boom, you're done. And it's like, you're truly out, in a way where there've been some lifters where, do you know who the IPF single ply lifter is from Norway? CYC?
Carl?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You remember CYC? Yeah. Would you, if it was that level to where you're like, boom, you hit it and then you're totally out. I think he lost a ton of weight, right? He's just out of it. So those are your options. Either just longevity, Andre style, or just bam and then out.
Yeah, bam and then out. I'm playing after November. Just mic drop. See you later.
Yeah, that would be fast. Actually, by the way, do you know anything about the CYC thing? Do you know if he's?
I haven't. No, I've not really any clue what you're talking about.
Yeah. Or you don't? Do you know who he is?
Oh, yeah, I've seen him. Yeah,
okay.
Lifted, but I didn't. I mean, that's the way it went down. That's crazy.
Yeah, he actually had a knee injury, and then he basically got surgery on his I think it was knee, and then he lost a ton of weight, and it was like that was it. And people saw pictures of him skinny, and he used to be the IPF single ply world champion.
Oh, wow.
for super heavies. For super heavy, yeah, and then it's just
Is the blonde guy? Is he blonde?
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. I mean, he's very, very popular. That's why, like, I'm sure you've seen him, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he was
No,
the
I
face of
didn't
it.
really his personal story or anything like that.
Mhm. Yeah. So with yourself, actually, this is a good question as far as your 3 routes. So you're going raw with wraps and multiply. Is there any single ply future there? Because you're honestly your squat style to me looks really similar to an IPF single ply squat.
Yeah, that I've had a lot of people actually say that to me, that I should go single ply because I can do pretty good at it. I like Blade. I got a lot of respect for Blade. I like Blade a ton. He's a great guy, and that's his world. He can have it. And plus, bench is so hard. Benching his shirt is so hard, and I hated every minute of it. I had a single ply katana, and I got 686, and I was like, that's enough. Like, I'm good.
Yeah. I'd imagine that's a tricky learning curve.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say this question flat out. Who are your top 5 powerlifters of all time? You are speaking as the man with the highest total in the world. So this gives it extra weight, and you can include yourself in this list. So you are also subject to wherever you want to put yourself.
Oh, top 5's tough. Oh, gotta go. And of course, why would you not? Not to mention what he got away with for so long too. I mean, kicked out of the IPF and at the time he was a powerlifting bad boy. Like, so
Yeah.
that's cool for me. They're gonna go Ed, Andre, Eric. I've looked up to Eric so much. It is ridiculous. And man, just the greats. Donnie, Super D. What he's done for the sport and the way he's moved it forward. And yeah, I don't really know. There's so many
Would
more.
you put yourself in the top 5 at all? Yeah, I mean,
okay, sure. Yeah, I'll put myself in the top. There you go. That's just to close it out more than anything. I mean, there's been so many more guys that have done more for the sport, especially like Donnie. He's done a lot for the sport. I do, after what he did on the platform, I do like that. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was the multi-ply days, and it's always controversial. And, back then, you get away with highway murder, and nobody batted an eye compared to now. There's a certain side of me that appreciates the way the IPF handles all their stuff and the way they do, because that's progressing the sport a lot more, and I'm all for that. But that's just not me.
So how do untested lifters view IPF super heavies? As far as, you know where I'm taking this. As far as drug use, is it one of those things? Because you have the perspective that I just don't have. I both don't have experience, obviously, with drugs, but I also don't. I think a lot of people don't actually know how little I know. Where I would be willing to say, especially if all like fitness YouTuber type guys, fitness YouTubers, I'm probably the least educated on steroids or anything untested of my peer group. Like I really, because it's one of those things where I think I have a similar temperament to you, where it's like, if you're going to do something, you go into it and you do it because you want to do it. And if you don't, like, you just kind of don't care, like, as far as whatever anyone else is doing. So, I mean, I just like, I truly don't know the details of it or anything. I know the population size is obviously a huge factor. Things like that make it make sense in genetic differences. But as someone in the know, are there ever moments where you're like I could tell that guy's probably on? And is it generally is the sense of untested lifters that the difference doesn't really matter because it's like, all right, we know like everyone's really probably on.
Right. Yeah. I don't really like to look at it that way. I've always been on since the first meet, so I've never really had anything to hide. I try to be more transparent for the younger crowd, so I don't make the same mistakes that I made, when I first started out with it, as far as health wise. But as far as the IPF guys, super heavies, like, it's I don't know. Of course, you can talk shit. Everybody can talk shit, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. I'm glad Ray, stands behind it and sticks his ground and says he's natty, and he is, just for the federation and whatnot. Do I question it? Do I change my opinion about him? No, not whatsoever. Ray's a great guy. Every interaction we've had.
So are you saying you think he is natural?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay, yeah, because I just want to, because I do just want the raw opinion. And again, like this is just, by the way, that is my opinion too. I've said that in a way where it's like, oh, you actually believe it? No, I'm just
right.
But
no. I'd be that guy too, but I do believe he is. I mean, just with as strenuous as the testing is and as updated as has been over the last even 4 years, the way you guys went into it with WADA and everything like that, like it. I do believe so, and you got Kelly. So I mean, it's just like they kind of finished him off, but it just, and who knows what the truth is behind that? Steroids are so taboo. It's almost disgusting. But then again, marijuana was 20 years ago too, so it's just like it's different. But I believe him, and I believe even if he's not, that's something he's got to live with, not me. I don't care.
And just generally, like when you see the IPF scene, do the bench press numbers make you also see it as potentially truly legitimate as far as drug testing? Because I've definitely noticed that it's like the bench press gap is, I mean, truly insane. Where it's like there really are very, very few IPF lifters that bench 600 plus. Very few.
Well, I mean, yeah, no, exactly. Hey, Jasmine, Mike, and it's like the only guy. There's a couple more, but hardly any other ones. But yeah, like definitely, it definitely stands out a lot more than with the squat or the deadlift. And even then, there's a good gap after Ray, Cheza. There's a good gap. Not very. Yeah. I remember when 900-pound squats were hardly anything to happen in gaps, yet alone in sleeves. So yeah, I totally believe the bench has a lot to do with it, and good. I'm glad you guys are staying natty. That's something in a roundabout way. There's a side of me that wishes I would have too. But now,
what do you think if you had to guess? What do you think your peak total will be if you just totally natural for your whole life and we have no idea where it goes? What would the number be where you're like, okay, I better hit that? What's at least the minimum number? You're like, okay, no matter what, I'm totaling at least like 21, 22, 23. Which one would it be?
Yeah, I think a 2,000-pound total would be pretty easy for me, Natty. I would believe so, but 22 might be a reach. 23, somewhere around there. So I don't think I want to do that to my pride or myself. Coming this far, but just who knows? It might happen. You could get done with everything PCT and could try it, but it's interesting. But I'm at that stage. What's the point now?
So, what do you think is at the top of the mountain? What do you think is a mistake that you see people commonly doing in powerlifting today? Like, what's one thing where you just maybe even a broader point, that like a cultural point that you think some people are really doing wrong, where they're setting themselves up for frustration, let's say, in the sport?
Needing instant gratification. We touched on that earlier. Like switching coaches every 3 weeks, or like I'm just like, why? You have to give it way more time. That reach for instant gratification, and then just people getting exploited on the internet for talking shit, like or like call outs, stuff like that. It's just like, you really want to be known for that? Or having the controversies, which, don't get me wrong, controversy has its place and whatnot, but it's just like, why? It isn't switching coaches and programs and everything. If you just stay consistent, if it doesn't work, I get it. But if you stay consistent and it works, what's the point?
So let's say, well, first of all, who are your 3 favorite lifters to follow right now? Like, as far as people putting out frequent content, let's say outside of, obviously we have like the legends, like Ed and all that stuff. But let's say of 3 lifters who are kind of really currently rising, who are your 3 favorites that really are almost like that active inspiration for you?
John's definitely one, and the way John went about, coming, the way he's done everything for the past. I've known him for as long as he's been lifting, and just his come up has been great to see, and very inspirational for a lot of lifters. It's good, Natty, getting the top of the game, him and Gibbs going at it, everything like that, and then coming, opening the door, getting on the dark side, and now just exploding. Yeah, definitely, John's a good inspiration. Man, it's such a toss up as far as information wise, because like I see Trevor Jaffe, he's always giving back, and I know he's a great coach. He's way better. I'll never tell him this, but I think he's a way better coach than he is a lifter. But he's still trying to stay competitive and stuff like that. And the progression and moving forward and stuff, the way he tries to take coaching onto another level has been pretty great to watch. Yeah, I do like watching Jamal. Jamal's a fun lifter to watch. He's pretty inspirational, and plus, who knows what could happen in his future if he decides to bump it up a weight class and stuff like that. His pulls have been pretty phenomenal this last year. So, yeah, those guys are the fun ones to watch. There's still so many more guys too, and I do like to stay in my own lane. Where if you're not a super heavyweight, I don't really pay much mind if I don't know you personally. That social media is not the funnest form of entertainment for me, I guess you could say. But yeah, those are the guys I enjoy watching.
Yeah, actually, Jamal, I plan on having in this 4-video series. So it'll be Ray, you. I'll see if Julius. He might be getting a little too much clout to where I'm like, I'm not 100%. He did the video with Pete Rubish, so I'm like, okay, I should be good to go. But you never want to just say like, okay, I'm gonna get the best of best, and then you just get ghosted, and it's like, oh damn, okay, he got Larry Wheels big.
right, yeah. Charging $25 for an autograph. Yeah.
Okay, so in the next 5 to 10 years, is there any particular lifter that you think could beat your total, that you have an eye on someone, or you see the potential in?
Yeah, Luke Null.
Luke Null? Who is that? I actually don't like.
Actually, out of Bloomington, 24-year-old correctional officer. Yeah, his squat's been coming around, but he's always had a 600-pound bench, and he was benching 600 like 3 or 4 years ago. Just started pulling around 850. I think he just pulled 881 the other day.
Wow.
So yeah, he's got good potential, but he hasn't been on the platform much. That's really going to be his biggest downfall, his experience. So I know it's coming around. Peter's definitely got a good shot. Like I said earlier, he's kind of ramping up for something big. Other than that, there's really not many other people on my radar. I always keep Eric right back here because I know if he wants to turn it on, he will, and he'll wreak havoc just as he can, and he's still young. So, other than that, no, I try not to notice.
Okay, so as far as people outside of the sport, let's say, first of all, what strongman do you think would be the best powerlifter? We know Thor. Thor was up there. Do you think Thor is someone who could try to sneak and grab one of your records, or are you trying to push it up? Are you thinking about that as you say your total goals, that you're like, okay, kind of based on maybe he might come back?
Yeah, I've actually had his coach, Sebastian, Australian strength coach. Him and I, we're decently good friends. I do like Baz quite a bit, and I've told him multiple times, you keep his ass in strongman. I don't I do not need him over here. He can reach out and talk to you. I think there's multiple strongmen that have put a good 2-3 years dedication. They could come over and snatch my record, no problem. But I'm just glad that strongman's lucrative enough they aren't coming over here.
Yeah, I think Eddie is also one where his bench, especially, I think it's whenever you see a strongman with a big bench, that's where, I mean, that really would be the only potential missing part. And if it's not, then their deadlift's going to be good to go.
Right? No, exactly. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I can easily see Eddie squatting 9 and pulling 950 and benching 650, 700. No problem.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be huge. So what athlete of any sport, if you could take any athlete of any sport in history, what do you think? What athlete would have the highest total? Since again, you're the person with that number. What person would be? You think there's someone who, if they just did this sport, that maybe have like a 3,000 with reps total? Like we could take genetics of anybody.
Man, that's so tough because it just takes me back to the older days, like Kazmaier, Reinhold, and all those guys that actually did do a lot of competitive powerlifting on top of the strongman stuff. You know, Pujanowski, like all those guys. Yeah, I feel with Thor's age and mass, yeah, he could demolish.
I think he'd be the top.
Yeah,
even among something like football players.
Yeah, definitely.
You think he's got that build?
Yeah.
It's very interesting given how tall he is too. That could work. And you said you're 6'2".
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's interesting too, because a lot of people kind of assume that, and not necessarily that super heavies are short, but they kind of still assume the kind of old school way of thinking of just like shorter range motions, kind of all that matters, blah blah blah. And then of course, like we mentioned with Jezza, where it's like it works for the squat, and then it just destroys the deadlift. Yeah. So given you are 6'2", was there ever a point in your life where you considered being a strongman?
Oh no, it's too much cardio.
Really? Yeah, and also, how much? You said you do overhead work. How much can you military press for 1 rep max? If you just
my best is 405, but I'm not
405. Really? Wow. Really? Is there video of that? That's great.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'll definitely grab it if I can.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was down here, and that was like straight out of the rack, straight up. And that was, don't get me wrong, it wasn't the prettiest, but yeah, I don't know. Not always, but I've had a decent overhead, I'd like to say. But I don't know if like the strict standards of strongman, they're not. You know, everybody throws it and stuff like that. But overhead's always been decent on mine, but it's just something I've always kind of done, but I never really pushed it much farther than that. And the U.S. record's like 440 or something like that. Robert Oberst has, I thought.
Yeah, I'm honestly not familiar enough to know, but that definitely sounds about right. I definitely know Robert's really good at. Well, wasn't it recently broken? I think it was recently broken in a meet where it was like it was like very similar to Thor's deadlift, where it was like controversial if it should have counted.
It might have been Rob Kearney.
Yeah. I think it was. Yeah, I think it was. Yeah. So is 405 the heaviest overhead press of any powerlifter? You know?
Oh no, Derek did 500.
Really? Wait, Derek. Wait, that was seated, that wasn't it? Was that?
Yeah, he
that
did both.
Standing.
He did both.
He's standing 500.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh.
I know. I've watched him hit 405 for like sets of 15 before.
Really?
That was ridiculous. He took his accessories more serious than he took his.
Did you train with Derek in person?
Like, yeah, multiple times. Yeah. Yeah, it was cool. And Eric and all those guys too. Like,
do you know what happened to Derek Kendall? Because all I know is that he quit or stopped powerlifting. But
his body just did a show.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think he did a show December, or January, somewhere around there. Lives in New York, still a teacher, loves his life. And I think Jackie might just got pregnant again. I know they got one kid at least.
Do you ever like nudge at him like, hey, you want to get back in?
No, I don't. I'm good. I'm good.
You're like, no, stay away, stay.
And I think he was just bodybuilding at first, powerlifting, took it serious, got hurt in reps, said he wasn't going to do reps anymore, and then he just like, this isn't worth it. His wife wanted to move to New York. They moved to New York, and he's just enjoying his life. I get that too. You know, that's completely understandable.
If you got to a point where you did decide powerlifting wasn't worth it, would you go into bodybuilding?
Definitely not. No way.
No.
Hey, no way.
Well, would you just not do anything like as far as competitively, or would you do like, would there be a side interest, or just be like, okay, let's just not even worry about that?
No, I definitely still train. I do that more mentally for mental side than anything. So yeah.
But you wouldn't do like competition. You wouldn't, because I know some people where I remember even the another big guy, JP Price. I remember he had a CrossFit background. That I think a lot of people maybe underestimate how many guys have such a high variety as far as their background. And JP Price got into powerlifting, I believe, due to CrossFit directly.
Oh wow!
And he still committed. Did you know? Yeah, it's crazy. Like I remember even talking to him about it. I'm like, what? And he still's kind of like in the box jumps every now and then, things like that. And he used to squat 1,000 pounds. But it is interesting that it seems like when you get to this level of strength that you're on, and really nobody else is as far as total, but that some of those guys who push 1,000-pound squats, which I believe is, as far as with sleeves, it's 3 people. That's it. It does seem like the moment you're mentally not into it, it's like it never comes back. It seems like.
Yeah. No, for sure. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I like around this time 2 years ago, I was at that point, but I had a lot more shit going on in life, and I was getting ready to move down here, getting ready to propose, getting ready to start a new job, getting ready and other stuff like that. So I was just like, powerlifting, take a back seat. I'm good. And your strength's going to stay if you want to push it, and especially if you know how to properly get your strength back and what size you need and stuff like that. So definitely it'll stick around, especially depending on age too. I'll be 34 in 2 weeks, so kind of in the middle of the prime area.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So is there any random thing about you that either training related or personal life that people would not expect or do not know? Maybe even people who somewhat know your lifting.
I used to be able to dunk a basketball. I know.
Really?
Yeah. 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 I know
how heavy were you at that time?
Oh, that was high school, so like 330.
330.
Yeah.
So you're 330 in high school, squatting like 550 plus first time, squatting. And so by the time you were a senior in high school, were you squatting 600 plus?
I don't think you really pushed it. It was like 500 or 600, somewhere around there.
Wow. It does seem like vertical leap is something that is correlated with natural great strength athletes. Like it seems like every single one really does have a good vertical.
Yeah, track, especially track athletes. I mean, you, Kevin, Kevin Oak, he was real big.
Tom Martin too. Tom Martin ran like Tom Martin ran like a 10.6 or something, 100-meter dash, like auto time officially. Yeah, like really, where you're like, whoa. Like, now it is tough between him and Kevin, because I know Kevin was big, Big East and like Villanova, which is or Villanova, which is like as legit as it gets. But I actually think Tom Martin was actually the fastest. If I'll have to check that back. It was funny because there's one time where he did box jumps on his YouTube channel too, and this was in his Natty day still. And I remember just everyone was like, "What?" Like the box height was something like 65 inches or something to jump on, and you're just like, "What?"
I get excited for look at 32 inches, so yeah, I totally get it.
Do you train jumps at all anymore now?
I do mostly for fun more than productivity. It's just like, how can I try to get hurt but not get hurt?
Because there was a situation that was really scary to me, is that I know he has a lot of issues overall, and not to speak negatively on it. Just saying that Steve Gentili, I remember he said that he did a jump where he tore both of his quads from jumping. Yeah, both of his quads from jumping, that's
oh my god!
Hey, you're laughing at that, but I'm just saying, like, how that alters my perception is as a natty lifter, lifetime, all that. I just see that and I go, I don't know how this stuff affects you guys, but I don't like, to me that seems because it reminds me of Tom Martin tore his tricep while squatting. I'm like, bro, I don't know do you think the use does just affect I know it obviously does affect the ratio of tendons to muscle strength, I believe, at least, unless that's bro science. yeah, does that make you have to be more careful when it comes to fun stuff where you're like, okay, I know I'm operating with like a V12 engine right now and I can't be completely deconditioned and just jump into something.
According to bro science, you still got me laughing about that. I completely agree. There is a huge, like you said, you got the V12 motor running on, inline 4-cylinder tendons. But I've also been a big advocate about having fun too. There's been multiple times, like I think it was like July 2016. I signed up for a powerlifting meet, not peak. Just walked in with a buddy to weigh in, and the meet director's like, "Hey, you want to compete?" I'm like, "Sure." Very next weekend, I was at a FitCon, and they're like, "Hey, you want to do the strongman competition?" And I'm like, "Sure." Like, it's all about having fun and just doing it and enjoy time. Yeah, you could get hurt, but you could also not have a lot of fun. Like, and what's the point if you're not having fun?
Yeah, that's very similar to John Hack too. It's funny that you guys are the best of the best. And John, I know, does some strongman stuff just for fun. And he did do one strongman competition at one point, like a while back. And it seems like he's kind of interested in that stuff now. Yeah. So how actually, as far as injury stuff and when it comes to use, is there a clear point where you can tell, like, look, I know if I use more, it could risk it? Because it really seems like the top name, again, it's like I'm not going to name some names that come to mind, but there are some guys where it's like they get hurt in different areas so much that it's like it has to be some systemic, like hormonal issue, I would imagine, that's influencing the levels of injuries. So is there something that very deliberately, I remember on the Rubish thing, you said that on the Rubish podcast, you said that you don't use orals going into a meet, which you used to do, because of kidney risk and discomfort.
Yeah, definitely.
So is there like, as far as number, like, is there literally a point where you can tell, like, if I did more than this, I would just risk it?
Oh, big time. I think that has a lot to do with like the learning with it and finding out what compounds will work for you. I can remember the first time I ever took Turnaball, I tore my bicep, and I was like, "Oh, I'll never take that ever again."
Right.
But do I know if that was a direct issue or if that was just the way I was squatting too? But I know there's a different compounds that do dry you out, which that's definitely going to make you, like, you don't have water on your muscle, water on your joints. You're asking for trouble there. As far as like when it goes with the amount, I don't. These last 3 years, I've just been an advocate of more is never better.
Yeah.
You find a dose that works and stick with it. Of course, playing around with different compounds, looking into it and finding out exactly their chemical properties and the way they operate within a cell and stuff like that should be your first choice, even if you're not if you're not competitive about it, if you're not pushing weight and stuff like that. Like, you should always look up on it. I don't know why a person would want to do something like that and not know what it's going to do.
I remember particularly, I think it was this one I feel comfortable saying because I'm pretty sure he was outright with it. I think Mark Bell said something about injecting it, and I think it was just test or something basic or something like that, like nothing crazy. But I remember I think he said he like was not even checking how much it was or something like that, like not even concerned as to the amount. And I remember just hearing that. I'm like, what? How's that? So that's the attitude some people. Do you know of some people with that attitude, and you're just like, why? Like, why not be safer?
Yeah, exactly. And I know a bunch of guys that will just buy anything and everything too. I know, like, if they're not even getting anything checked, not even like seeing, my buddy just made this in his bathtub. You want to try it? Like, sure. What? Are you kidding me? I guys that have like straight up taken nothing but canola oil and they're breaking out every other day and they're like, I don't know what's going on. I'm like, yeah, I do. It's vegetable oil. Like, yeah, it's obnoxious. But the last 2 to 3 years, I've paid a lot more attention to it too, down to the T. And I have had a lot of stuff tested, and I have found out, what was good from what manufacturer and what wasn't. And I've also taken out a lot of drugs that I had back in the day that weren't needed clearly now. And I can't say that I've experienced with, or experimented with anything different, but there is certain times where I'll just be like, all right, give me 100 milligrams Anadrol. You know, it's just not having a great day. And then there's times where it's like, no, I don't need it. You know, it's like, I'm good. Or, you know, it's stuff like that. And that's just human nature in my eyes. But, I feel like sticking by my guns with the whole thing about less or more isn't always better. It's a pretty good statement to have about it.
Yeah, it seems like it's almost similar to training volume in a sense with as far as like competition specific training volume, where it's like in the end of the day, maybe getting higher is eventually the goal, but it's got to be in gradients so much that it's minimum effective dose first.
Oh,
you see those guys who just go, oh, wow. It does seem like it's weird. It's like on the untested side, the use is almost similar to junior burnout on the drug tested side, where it's like the drug tested side, it's more just like, okay, let's run, Lane Norton's program right now, even though I'm in high school, and then just like, or Smolov, and then just boom, totally burn out.
Yeah.
And then on the untested side, it's more just that it would be scarier, the like chemical burnout where you just go so hard. Because I almost can't imagine how you would transition out of it if going too hard on that. That'd be scary.
1 second. I can't hear you. Oh, there's the button. Sorry.
No, you're good.
My phone's about to die, so I got to plug it in, make sure it doesn't die in the middle of this. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you totally good.
All right. Yeah, and that's honestly, my first 2 years of powerlifting was that way, where what do you got? Let me take it. Yeah, I was just kind of, I will take anything, more or less a walking science experiment. And I kind of talked about earlier, that's why I'm so open about what I do now and the levels and stuff like that, because I will, I have no problems talking about it. I'm going through some medical stuff now to where it has to do I don't say heart failure because I have no heart failure, but I'm finding myself wanting to take a little bit more precaution, where I just talked to my family doctor a couple weeks ago, got a cardiologist, started talking to him. Totally cool guy. Used to work with the NFL lineman in Jacksonville. And I tell him, like, hey, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm taking. He's like, good, great. Let's get you to take this safely. So you don't have to worry about stuff 10 years down the road and stuff like that. I feel like me being able to portray that on the younger community is going to help for sure. But we're also still human. I'll still try. First time I ever took tren, I was like at a bar drinking, and it wasn't like the next day thing. It was like a couple weeks later, but I'm just taking tren, feel like $1 million, and I'm talking to my that I go to the gym with. I was like, never really believed in God until I became one. Like being the douchiest person in the world, just saying it, just stimulating that off of the sensation that I was getting off the tren and how great I felt. So it gives you that false sense of being godly like.
Wow, that's funny. Yeah. Also, I was about the you mentioned before with the oral thing on the other podcast about, did you say you had a kidney stone? Was it so was that caused by the orals?
I believe orals on top of a little bit too much energy drinks. They don't help. I don't drink soda, but I know that energy drinks don't do anything good for your kidney function on top of the oral steroids. Yeah, definitely. Orals hit your kidneys a lot harder than most other ones. I mean, they all affect your kidneys, but the orals do it quite a bit worse for me. These last couple cycles, I've been trying to stay away from orals as much as I can, just because how harsh they are on you and your body. So it's just.
So are your kidneys fine overall? Just long term.
Yeah,
okay, good.
Definitely.
Yeah, because that's the one where there have been some examples where that's one where if it goes left, it's a tough one to get back. You better just lose one if it goes. No, so you're good to go. That's great to hear. I
haven't noticed if Steve ever said he kind of blamed it on his kidney issue. I don't know if he ever blamed it on the use, but he does. Yeah. But I mean, I'm sure there's probably some hereditary stuff there too. And it's just so kind of sad to hear from such a good guy. I do like Steve a lot. He's a good guy.
I mean, yeah, I think that's the whole community kind of has to consolidate it, because it's also somewhat similar to John Meadows on the other side,
Exactly.
and having this heart attack. And he is a very, very clearly, pro science guy, getting this thing checked out. I believe he actually had a checkup before the heart attack, like pretty soon before it, and he was fine, right? Like tested out fine. Yeah, so it's definitely has nothing to do with assassinating their character or anything. It's just a real risk, and obviously it's all mixed with genetics and things like that, in predisposition. But yeah, I really like your approach to it, because it is like the body weight thing, where it's like, look, even if you're natural, I mean, I actually do think there's a very strong argument to be made that if being natural is about health, that there should be something like blood panels or more general health, I would say, testing, if that's actually the goal. Because it's like, if someone can get to, if someone could get to 450 pounds and they would be IPF champion, it's like, isn't that worse than Andrei Milenichev being 360? And like, isn't that the whole point, to be like healthy, right? Yeah. So we have two questions left. One is, if you could change anything about powerlifting, what would it be? You have a magic wand.
Untested powerlifting or tested powerlifting? Damn it! Because I do appreciate that.
Let's do both.
Everything, but I want a standardization, and you can't really take the federations out of it because of how far the IPF has came for powerlifting. But all the other bullshit that we got down here, like the 35 million feds that both of us really haven't even heard of, if we could just get rid of one of those, and even, I'm not saying unsanctioned meets are the answer, but have one federation, have one ruling body, that would be a beautiful thing, and I think we would all progress 10 times faster. But everybody wants instant gratification, and everybody wants, I can do this better than him, or I can do that better than them, or this guy was wrong, and pointing fingers. If you point the finger back to yourself and try to help all of us, we might get somewhere. I really think that would unite all of us, and we could still keep the untested and tested, or we could still keep the knee sleeves and the knee wraps, and just work together to move forward. That would be my main goal. We're never going to be mainstream. We're never going to be the MLB or the NFL. But, just the baby steps to get towards that direction would be a beautiful thing. Right now, it feels like we're almost stagnant because we're fighting with each other so much.
Yeah. Do you think there's any route as far as untested that would get to that point? Like, if you actually had to pick an organization, would it be would be USPA as far as for within the US?
They're definitely the most popular
Yeah.
and kind of respected. But we're all human.
Yeah.
They're definitely the higher one. But as far as their rules, their equipment rules, they would have to change for the higher numbers to join. I mean,
Okay.
Yeah, we don't need to beat around the bush. You're going to get more weight out of a monolift.
Yeah.
There's no question.
Yeah. So that's it. So the untested side really does not have a clear body that they would defer to then, right? Because it's like even the USPA leads in internationally to, what is it, the IPL?
Yeah.
Is it the IPL? Yeah, and it's like IPL's basically like California Worlds, I've always heard. Not not World. Yeah, so there's truly, so no one really knows what to go with then, right, for untested?
Yeah, exactly.
So do you think money meets itself will be enough to where you just say, look, if it's enough money, then that's good enough? I mean, at the end of the day, that kind of is the goal of all of it.
At the end of the day, what's the point of if you can do it and make money, and it's still a hobby, or even if you couldn't make enough money to where it wasn't just a hobby, if it was your actual income and it was your career, then yeah, hell yeah, that'd be a beautiful thing. Money needs to be great, but it would just take us all coming together a little bit more, and sponsorships and publicity and stuff like that.
Yeah, and this all brings me to my last question: is where do you see powerlifting going? Do you see powerlifting going to ESPN, any mention on Sports Center, or even the Olympics if for the IPF side? Now, yeah, I could give my 2 cents on that, but I won't. But between those two, and I will also make a point to mention the West Side versus the World documentary then opened the doors to Netflix, which then opened the doors to online ESPN. Now, I'm not sure what that was, a multi-ply meet on ESPN, on a branch of ESPN. I don't believe it was on TV, right?
No, it wasn't on ESPN. It wasn't
Yeah.
on. No, it was like ESPN 8 or something like that.
Yeah. It was on the Ocho. So where do you personally, do you think there's a chance that you will be on ESPN someday?
I was at the WPO. I didn't compete, but I was there.
Yeah, let's say your total. Let's say, I mean, I'm talking properly on. I'm not talking like, oh, your beard's in the background. Like, I'm saying you set the biggest, let's especially say you squat with wraps more than anyone ever has, just to give it like a very clear, like, okay, at least they can show 5 seconds, right? If they're not going to show the total. So let's say with wraps, you squat 520 kilos. Yeah, and then your total is that high. Do you think that would ever be on ESPN?
I really honestly think that, well, the WPO did open the door for that to happen to the raw side, because raw side's popularity is a lot higher than the multi-ply side. Mm-hmm. But it would take a little bit more execution and unity out from the raw side to get in there. See, the geared side, they do have a good small but good group of people. And multi-ply is looked down upon for the last 20 years, and people have hated it, but they are unified. They do stick together, and they're all weird, and they're all conjugate, but whatever. But yeah, that's where we're lacking. I feel like we do have a good chance if we sit down and try to bring up some standard rules for all of us to make it happen. Is it a goal of mine? Nah, I don't care if money. That's really not a big goal of mine. I don't know. It's just the person I am. But it'd be cool. It would be awesome. And if the opportunity did come up, I would probably give it a good shot and give it everything I got. So yes, it'd be awesome. But we're heading in the right direction. It's just not going to happen overnight.
Yeah, that'd be it would be awesome. And I think the fact that also Thor's deadlift definitely opened up the doors a lot to this. That's why I just have to think. I do think you're in an interesting position where the total is definitely something where it's harder to show all three at once, like in a way that's just boom, right. Clickbait. Just like bam, Thor deadlifted, boom, he deadlifted it.
It's over.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think I think you just got squat 520. I think that's just, you just gotta do it. That's the only solution. It's the only thing that'll work out. But yeah, so that is it. That's all our questions. Unless do you have anything that you'd like to add, that you'd like to send out to people? Now, I will say statistically, 2% are going to be viewing at this point of my audience. Actually, that is an actual fact. Like, I've checked. It goes up to like 8% at some point. 2%. Yeah. So do you have anything you'd like to leave as parting words, or anything you just like to throw in?
I'm good, man. I got thank you for this, man, and thank you for doing it for all 4 of us at the top of the sport. It's really great. You got you've had well earned publicity. You've done awesome for this long of a time. It's really good to see. I can remember watching some of your stuff when I was first coming up too, and it's awesome. It's really good. And of course, got to thank my sponsors. Those guys are helping me far, and yeah, that's about it. Like I said,
who are your sponsors? Just to give them a quick shout out.
I got Jamie Boss, the clothing company. Never Been Stronger supplements. Wicked Wolf beard oil. LWP Pharmaceutical, and my gym here, Perfect Storm in Daytona Beach. Those guys couldn't do it if I didn't have them. So
yeah, that's awesome. All right, so that's it, guys. We have wrapped up the interview with, of all the lifters, this is the end goal. This is the point. The point is to total as much as possible. It's not just to have one lift as good as possible. It's to have the whole package, and the best package. And okay, that sounds a little weird. And in human history. So again, thank you, Dan, for being on. To everybody watching, to the 2%, make sure to like the video to support the channel. Subscribe if you haven't already. And thanks for watching, guys. Peace.
Hi, Mom.
The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, who comes short again and again.